Chapter 2852, Sudden Change During the Great Ceremony outside the capital city. The explosion containing all the energy from the 100 Saints city slammed against the capital city again and again like the surging sea. The Dark Star Emperor stood outside the capital city alone. His presence blazed, like a god visiting the mortal realm, possessing divine might. He confronted the incoming storm of energy alone, preventing the destructive storm that could annihilate all from reaching the city walls. Inside the capital city, the great ceremony had already reached a critical juncture. The Grand Exalt's essence blood had completely merged with Sacred Feather. As it strengthened his every aspect, it also seemed to alter his bloodline. As a result, Sacred Feather seemed like a member of the Dark Star race through and through. The power of bloodlines his body emitted even vaguely pressured all members of the Dark Star race. Having merged with the droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood, Sacred Feather's bloodline had not reached the level of Grand Exalts, but it did manage to squeeze among the ranks of first descendants of Grand Exalts. And, the power of the bloodline Sacred Feather gave off rapidly spread and expanded through the Dark Star world, merging with the world and the ways of the Dark Star world. It seemed like it was resonating with a certain power hidden within the depths of the space there. The power was supreme, standing as lofty as the heavens. Its boundlessness and strength could not be described with words. It was as if once this power had emerged, it could destroy everything in the world and fend off the very laws of the world, forcing the great ways into retreat. However, this power was hidden away in the depths of space. Even sensing its existence required certain, special conditions. As for grasping or utilizing it, that was even more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Even Sacred Feather had only managed to open a door hidden in space with his presence. He could vaguely sense the existence of this power, achieving basic resonance after merging with the Grand Exalt's essence blood and elevating his bloodline to a certain level. But that was all. For him to mobilize this power was still a fantasy beyond his reach. And, Sacred Feather was completely unaware of this, as he had already fallen unconscious, unable to sense the outside world. The critical moment is here. Jian Chen, it's time for you to take action, or you'll have to watch as this divine beast dies before you. On the altar, the virtuous sage of heaven's lips hidden behind the mist curled into an evil smile. His eyes shone with excitement and eagerness. He opened his mouth suddenly, and his voice echoed through the entire city. Sacrifice the divine beast. With that, the virtuous sage of heaven waved his hand dramatically, and he immediately sprinkled the altar with green blood filled with vitality. That was the blood of life-devouring beasts. From the strength of the residual energy in the blood, it came from a primordial realm life-devouring beast. At the same time, thousands of members of the Dark Star race in the capital city fished out a bottle, removing the cap and sprinkling the blood of life-devouring beasts into the air. Immediately, energy of life with the presence of the wood spirits permeated the capital city. It reached the altar high in the air, directly enveloping the entire structure. Simultaneously, the supreme power hidden within the space seemed to sense something. Like it was awakened from its slumber, a tremendous might gradually spread out. Soon afterwards, the formation assembled from the 10 divine halls and the Dark Star divine hall suddenly sprang into action. Sacrificing Sacred Feather required the 10 divine halls and the Dark Star divine hall to complete the ritual. Once the great ceremony reached this stage, it would mean Sacred Feather's head had already been placed on the chopping block, while the formation assembled from the divine halls was a blade. Now, the blade was prepared to fall. Boom! However, a colossal rumble suddenly rang out at this exact moment. With the rumble, a ripple of energy powerful enough to make the Vice Hall Masters all pale suddenly swept through the 10 divine halls. Among the 10 divine halls, the 5th divine hall seemed to have received an unimaginably heavy impact, shattering to pieces in the air and falling out of the sky as countless fragments. The 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 5th divine hall, Bing Yuan, Taro, and Do Wujin, were all perplexed as they were launched far away from the shockwave the great energy created. The energy was far too great. It had completely reached the upper spectrum of infinite prime. After shattering the 5th divine hall, the energy spread towards the 9 other divine halls, as well as the Dark Star divine hall. With a violent collision, all of the divine halls rocked violently, swaying to and fro and shifting from position. The formation had originally been cast down by the 10 Divine Halls and the Darkstar Divine Hall. Now that the 5th Divine Hall was destroyed and the other Divine Halls had been shifted from their original positions, the formation obviously fell apart. The sudden change during the ceremony left everyone in the city dumbfounded. The 9 Hall Masters and all the Vice Hall Masters were stunned. As they gazed at the shattered 5th Divine Hall, none of them had any idea what had happened. As for all the members of the Darkstar race kneeling on the ground below, they were thrown into bewilderment. They had no idea what to do. Some of them stared at the falling fragments of the 5th Divine Hall and even forgot to dodge for a moment. As for Jian Chen, he strode through the air the moment the 5th Divine Hall shattered and arrived before the spatial furnace. His gaze was cold as the god-tier sword that belonged to Kuan Tian appeared in his hand, emitting a dazzling streak of light. Afterwards, Jian Chen wielded the sword and directly swung it at the spatial furnace. Kuan Tian, have you lost your mind? What are you doing? The virtuous sage of heaven cried out from the altar, both surprised and furious. Only at this moment did the 9 Hall Masters notice that Jian Chen had already approached the spatial furnace. In particular, when they saw the sword radiating with energy in Kuan Tian's hand being swung at the spatial furnace, they were all frightened out of their wits. Kuan Tian, what are you doing? Stop, Kuan Tian, stop right now. You'll disrupt the great ceremony like this, Kuan Tian, you mustn't. Stop right now. At that moment, the expressions of all the primordial realm experts who witnessed the situation changed. Their gazes became filled with disbelief. Kuan Tian, stop. At the same time, the Darkstar Emperor's dignified and furious voice rang out from outside the capital city. He used his full strength to disperse the fragment of energy in front of him before rushing back into the capital city as quickly as he could, without regard for anything else. Boom! Another deafening rumble rang out above the capital city. Jian Chen ignored everyone's pleas. His eyes shone coldly as the space near his sword shattered, becoming riddled with cracks. In the end, the sword struck the spatial furnace viciously. The spatial furnace was very tough, but it was unable to withstand the force behind the strike. A great hole immediately appeared. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2853, The Bronze Lamp, Kuan Tian. The Darkstar Emperor bellowed furiously. Flames of anger burned in his eyes as his presence surged into the clouds. The tremendous pressure it gave off made all the primordial realm experts in the 100 Saint City shiver. He moved extremely quickly. The moment Jian Chen landed a strike on the spatial furnace, the Darkstar Emperor had already arrived at the other side of the spatial furnace. He directly extended his hand and suddenly closed it towards Jian Chen from afar. With that, he seemed to mobilize the power of the world. Immediately, the laws of the world began to flow and origin energy began to surge. Energy as turbulent as a river condensed in the surroundings in that moment, crushing towards Jian Chen. Clearly, the Darkstar Emperor had already become overwhelmed with rage. Although he did not use his full strength this time, he had no intentions of holding back. As a result, the strike was well beyond what any 6th heavenly layer infinite prime could block. However, Jian Chen was unfazed. Chaotic force circulated in his body, filling every inch in a single instant, pushing the defenses of the chaotic body to the limit. He used his sturdy body to forcefully endure the Darkstar Emperor's restraint. The Darkstar Emperor's restraint was extremely powerful. It squeezed space until it distorted. Before this absolute power, Jian Chen's entire skeleton creaked, and his entire body seemed to shrink slightly. If he had been a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime from the Darkstar race, his body probably would have ruptured and been torn to pieces a long time ago under this great force, no longer whole. Only Jian Chen's chaotic body could endure it with its basically deviant defenses and self-recovery. The Darkstar Emperor's eyes immediately narrowed with this sight. A sliver of shock flashed through them. He was extremely surprised by how Kuan Tian, who had reached the 6th heavenly layer recently, could actually withstand his power with so much ease. At this moment, the god artifact sword in Jian Chen's hand shone with dazzling light again. With surging sword chi, he slashed out 3 times in a single instant. He struck out extremely quickly, completing the attacks in a flash. The 3 streaks of light seemed to merge together. Resplendent light illuminated the surroundings, riddling the surrounding space with cracks. In particular, the 3 strands of light possessed slivers of might that belonged to a god artifact, as well as the destructive energy of chaotic force. In the end, the 3 slashes completely surpassed the 6th heavenly layer of infinite prime, reaching the 7th heavenly layer. They were so powerful that even the first hall master, who was publicly recognized as the greatest expert of the 10 divine halls, changed drastically in expression. "How is Kun Tian so powerful?" the first hall master murmured in a daze. As to him, the power in Kun Tian's strike seemed like they were at the 7th heavenly layer, but they had actually reached the 8th heavenly layer already. Meanwhile, the faces of the 7th hall master Getty and the 4th hall mazer Irvin, who had clashed with Jian Chen in the past, became extremely fascinating. There was stupefaction, shock, and confusion, but most of it was fear. They could sense how shocking of a level Kun Tian's 3 strikes had reached. This was already a force well beyond what they could contend with. Oh no, the hall master is under the influence of the planetary beast's will again. The planetary beast's power must have erupted on him. Hall master, wake up, please. Come to your senses. Please don't make a huge mistake. Bing Yuan, Taro, and Do Wujin hovered in the distant sky as they called out urgently. Everything happened much faster than it could be described, happening in a split second. Jian Chen's 3 strikes collided against the Dark Star Emperor's restraining force with enough power to shock all the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race. Boom! A thunderous rumble immediately rang through the air. The entire capital city shook, cracks spread across the ground, and the city walls began to collapse. When the tremendous ripple of energy descended, all the hall masters and vice hall masters, apart from the first hall master, were pushed back into a constant retreat, struggling to stabilize themselves. As for the weaker members of the Dark Star race on the ground, they suffered heavy casualties, all dying to this storm of energy. The Dark Star Emperor's restraining force had been split open by Jian Chen's attacks. Afterwards, Jian Chen did not stop at all, taking a step and immediately entering the spatial furnace with his sword. He arrived beside the unconscious sacred feather. As soon as he entered the spatial furnace, Jian Chen sensed that the space in there was completely different. Even though the spatial furnace had already stopped operating, the heavy might of the heavens still permeated the interior. This was the power of the world, or in other words, the power of the ways, as well as the power of the Dark Star world. Perhaps only power on such a level possessed the impossible ability to change and remake the very world around it, modifying Sacred Feather's bloodline. However, as soon as Jian Chen entered the spatial furnace, the Dark Star Emperor entered it too. His eyes were filled with anger he could not suppress, like a volcano that had already erupted. His killing intent surged wildly. That was because he had already noticed that Kun Tian was trying to steal the divine beast. The divine beast was crucial to the great ceremony. If they lost it, the great ceremony would definitely end in failure. And, Kun Tian's actions that had crossed the line would also cause an immeasurable impact to the great ceremony. He had completely crossed the Dark Star Emperor's bottom line, making the Dark Star Emperor direct his killing intent towards his own clansmen for the first time in countless years. Moreover, it was an important member of the 10 divine halls at that. However, right when the Dark Star Emperor was about to unleash his full strength and execute Kun Tian on the spot, he suddenly noticed that Kun Tian's eyes had become extremely piercing. At the same time, sword chi of absolute power that could sever the laws and ways and destroy the world and spacetime suddenly descended. The appearance of the sword chi immediately alarmed the Dark Star Emperor. His heart surged wildly, as he could sense a terrifying power that even made his soul tremble within the sword chi. Above Jian Chen's head, 2 strands of tiny, finger-sized sword chi appeared silently. The terrifying power that made the Dark Star Emperor's soul tremble came from these 2 strands of sword chi. However, these 2 strands of sword chi had appeared quickly and vanished even more quickly. It had truly been a flash. They had vanished before a moment had even elapsed after they appeared. What vanished with them was the startling sword intent that swept through the sky. The Dark Star Emperor's eyes narrowed violently. At that moment, he was unable to remain composed anymore. For once, shock filled his face, as he could already see the two strands of sword chi hurtling towards his face with indescribably terrifying speed. The speed seemed to have surpassed the restraints of time and the concept of spatial distance. Before the sword chi, even supreme experts who had reached Grand Prime probably were unable to dodge it, let alone him who had never truly reached Chaotic Prime. Silently, the two strands of sword chi plunged into the Dark Star Emperor's forehead. All of the defensive measures the Dark Star Emperor had taken beforehand were basically non-existent before the two strands of sword chi. They achieved nothing. As the two strands of sword chi flew out, a hint of exhaustion quickly appeared on Jian Chen's face. The two strands of sword chi had consumed half of the power of his soul in a single moment. A wave of dizziness immediately hit him. Jian Chen endured the dizziness and grabbed Sacred Feather, placing him in the divine hall he carried on him. The entire process unfolded extremely smoothly. There were no accidents at all. Only when he personally saw Sacred Feather lying peacefully in the divine hall did Jian Chen finally let out a sigh of relief inside. Sacred Feather's situation was unknown right now, and he had no idea how he was doing, but he had saved him at the very least. Afterwards, he directed his gaze towards the Dark Star Emperor, immediately becoming filled with killing intent and horrifying malice. However, after receiving the two strands of profound sword chi, his wounds were not as severe as Jian Chen imagined them to be. His body shuddered violently before stabilizing very soon. A small, detailed lamp made of bronze, only an inch high, hovered above the top of his head. A single flame burned on top of the bronze lamp, sprinkling with a hazy light that enveloped the Dark Star Emperor, protecting the Dark Star Emperor's soul at the same time. Most of the power from the two strands of profound sword chi had been blocked by this tiny lamp. As a result, while the Dark Star Emperor's soul sustained some injuries, they were not as heavy as Jian Chen imagined they would be. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2854. Who are you exactly? Jian Chen frowned. He gazed at the bronze lamp hovering above the Dark Star Emperor and felt it was quite the pity. Ever since he refined the profound sword chi, they had never failed him, succeeding every single time. There had never been any opponent who managed to withstand it. Even experts in entire major cultivation realm higher than him were powerless before the profound sword chi, forced to endure it. Yet today, before the Dark Star Emperor, his profound sword chi had been blocked for the first time, and that was when he used two strands at the same time. Logically speaking, two strands of profound sword chi were already enough to injure the souls of any first heavenly layer chaotic prime, let alone the Dark Star Emperor who had never truly reached chaotic prime and was still a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. However, in Jian Chen's eyes right now, the Dark Star Emperor's soul could basically be described as unfazed. He had only been slightly affected. He actually possesses a god artifact that can block soul attacks on him? Jian Chen could not help but grow stern. He could already tell that the Dark Star Emperor's bronze lamp was very special and unique. It only seemed to have one function, which was to protect the soul and block all attacks that targeted the soul. The profound sword chi was obviously also a form of soul attack. With the protection of the bronze lamp, Jian Chen's profound sword chi was immediately rendered useless. And, he could tell that the bronze lamp had already merged with the Dark Star Emperor's soul. As long as the bronze lamp remained, the Dark Star Emperor's soul would never perish. The bronze lamp and him basically coexisted. If the lamp was present, then he was present. If the lamp was destroyed, then he would be dead. The bronze lamp is actually a high-quality god artifact. If I want to destroy this high-quality god artifact, then let alone using two strands of profound sword chi, even if I use all four strands of profound sword chi, I won't even be able to make it shake. The level of my profound sword chi is far too low right now. It's just the 4 strands I condensed when I was at Sword Spirit. Only when my comprehension of the way of the sword reaches the major achievement or great perfection of Sword Sage and I condense the 7th or even 8th strand of profound Sword Chi can these attacks bypass the defense of the bronze lamp. After all, a high-quality god artifact can only be destroyed by Grand Primes, and stronger Grand Primes at that, Jian Chen thought as his face became ugly. The existence of the bronze lamp had already made him understand he was unable to kill the Darkstar Emperor no matter what. At most, he could destroy his body, but not his soul. To think that a measly infinite prime has such an unbelievable life-saving measure. Just this bronze lamp alone is enough to drive the grand primes of the saints' world into a frenzy. They truly are a race that produced a grand exalt. Sure enough, their heritage runs deep. In that moment, even Jian Chen became rather envious of the Darkstar race. To the other side, the Darkstar Emperor stared straight at Jian Chen. His eyes were filled with shock, disbelief, and surging anger. He said with an icy voice, basically squeezing each word through his teeth, "You're not Kun Tian at all. Tell me, just, who are you exactly? Who are you exactly? Who are you exactly? Who are you exactly?" When the Darkstar Emperor said the last, "Who are you exactly?" he had completely roared it out. Sound waves swept out, rumbling like thunder as it echoed through the surroundings and the capital city. Not only was there surging fury in the voice, but there was also a sense of utter madness. The mighty 5th Hall Master, a great figure of imposing authority only second to him in the Darkstar race, had actually been replaced and imitated by someone alone, and this person had maintained this disguise for such a long time right before him without being discovered. This had far too great of an impact on the Darkstar Emperor. Aside from that, because Jian Chen had saved Sacred Feather and moved him into a divine hall he carried on him, Sacred Feather's presence vanished from the world that belonged to the Darkstar race. Without Sacred Feather's presence for interaction and resonance, the residual powers of the Grand Exalt hidden in the space of the Darkstar world were gradually fading away. Having reached this point, the great ceremony could be described as mostly failed already. This series of events drove the Darkstar Emperor mad, and the rage he experienced surged endlessly, enough to make him destroy worlds and blind his eyes. What? He's not Kun Tian? Kun Tian right now isn't Kun Tian. How is that possible? Impossible. That's impossible. If he's not Kun Tian, then who is he? Even an outsider who entered the Darkstar world can't be this strong. In the capital city, everyone was thrown into chaos because of what the Darkstar Emperor said. In particular, the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters who had interacted with Jian Chen multiple times were all filled with disbelief. The impact of what the Darkstar Emperor had said was like being struck by a bolt of lightning to them, jolting them to the point where they blanked out. He really can't be Kun Tian. Kun Tian isn't this powerful, and Kun Tian's way of the sword is nowhere near as strong or as sharp as this person's. Most importantly, the startling sword intent that suddenly appeared just then has completely exceeded all of our understanding. It's impossible for Kun Tian to know something like that, as such a powerful secret technique does not exist within our Darkstar race, said the 1st Hall Master. His face was extremely ugly, and his voice was exceedingly stern. The gaze from his old eyes was extremely shocking, as if he was trying to strip down Jian Chen. He barked coldly, "State your true identity. Just who are you exactly?" The 8 other Hall Masters all remained silent. Their expressions changed rapidly. Actually, with the 1st Hall Master's analysis and upon considering Kun Tian's behavior recently, they had basically confirmed that the person before them was not Kun Tian. Who are you exactly? Who are you exactly? Why do you have Kun Tian's god artifacts? What have you done to Kun Tian? Tell me, what have you done to Kun Tian exactly? Where is the real Kun Tian? The 10th Hall Master Feng Shui shuddered violently. Her face was filled with gloom and despair. She seemed to have lost her mind. With a sharp scream, she charged towards Jian Chen in the air madly. No matter who you are, hand over the divine beast. It was also at this moment that the Darkstar Emperor called out. The malice from his body rose up as his killing intent surged towards the sky, directly unleashing his swiftest attack at Jian Chen. He launched a punch, unleashing his battle prowess at chaotic prime to shatter space. The punch was vicious and brutal, arriving before Jian Shen in a single instant. At the same time, a seal also flew into the air, turning into the size of a small mountain as it hovered in the sky. It gave off a startling aura as it fell from above Jian Shen's head. Jian Shen had experienced the power of the seal once before, but this time, the feeling that the seal gave him was completely different. Last time, the Dark Star Emperor had no intention of harming anyone, so he had controlled the power of the seal perfectly. When he suppressed Jian Shen, he had not caused him the slightest injury. But this time, Jian Shen could sense a tremendous might of lethality from the seal. This was a power out to kill. As the seal fell, the space below was unable to endure this great power and began to shatter and collapse in large swathes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2855. Fighting the Emperor. Faced with an attack on the level of chaotic primes from the Dark Star Emperor, Jian Shen dared not be careless at all. He completely unleashed his strength without holding back. Within his dantian, the chaotic nidin that seemed to have reached the limit of its current realm revolved rapidly, spitting out strands of chaotic force. Around Jian Shen, endless light from the way of the sword condensed before all, gathering in the god artifact sword in his hand. He thrusted the sword as hard as he could. Boom! The sword, surging with light, collided with the Dark Star Emperor's punch, producing a great rumble. Destructive storms of energy swept out, tearing wildly through the surroundings. Before Feng Shui, who had just charged over from the 10th Divine Hall, could even get close to Jian Shen, this ripple of energy struck her. Immediately, she let out a grunt and was forced back. Pushed by the energy ripple, she fell towards the ground uncontrollably. In particular, a few scattered strands of sword chi were mixed into the ripple of energy. Even though they had already been reduced to pieces, they were still extremely sharp, piercing through Feng Shui's protective energy with ease and leaving behind bloody marks on her body. Feng Shui, back away right now. This battle has already reached a level beyond what we can interfere with. Don't worry, the Emperor will definitely capture this person and force out Kun Tian's whereabouts from him. A Vice Hall Master comforted below, but even he sighed again and again inside. The god artifact armor and sword that belonged to Kun Tian had already ended up in this person's hands, so could Kun Tian still be fine? In the air, the Dark Star Emperor's punch was heavy and forceful, actually causing Jian Shen pressure he struggled to resist. When the fist and sword collided, the surging glow on the sword immediately shattered, and a crack immediately appeared in Kun Tian's god artifact sword, perhaps from damage taken beforehand. And the crack spread quickly, covering the entire sword very soon. In the end, it completely shattered into countless fragments with a bang. Just a single punch had destroyed a god artifact. After destroying the god artifact sword, the Dark Star Emperor's punch still showed no signs of running out of strength. It plunged right towards Jian Shen like it was unstoppable, piercing Jian Shen's protective light and landing on Jian Shen's chest in the end with tremendous force. A heavy thud of flesh striking flesh rang through the surroundings. Jian Shen's entire chest seemed to cave in as his body plummeted uncontrollably. However, the seal was falling down over him. The tremendous pressure from the seal seemed to form some kind of restraining force. As such, Jian Shen, who was supposed to be launched very far away, only backed away 3 meters in the end. The seal's restraining force had anchored him to where he stood. Jian Shen let out a furious roar at the sky. Chaotic force flowed turbulently through his body, and his chest that had caved in from the Dark Star Emperor's punch immediately turned back to normal. His wounds had also recovered completely in a single moment. He punched out again and again, directing his fist at the sky and engaging in the most violent clash with the descending seal. Immediately, claps of thunder seemed to ring out in the sky. Jian Shen combined his chaotic body and chaotic force and borrowed the might of the laws of the sword to launch the most powerful of attacks. Every single punch could shatter space, and every single collision was like thunder that could shake the heavens. The terrifying sound waves alone had fragmented the ground below and destroyed the walls of the capital city. Countless members of the Dark Star race went both blind and deaf, having been shaken to a point where they bled from their eyes, nostrils, mouth, and ears. The clash between Jian Chen and the Dark Star Emperor had been far too intense. Even the Vice Hall Masters of the 10 Divine Halls were unable to withstand it. They retreated again and again. However, even with his full-strength attacks, Jian Chen was unable to stop the seal, as the power that the seal currency possessed had also surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime and reached Chaotic Prime. Jian Chen's constant attacks only managed to weaken the force behind the seal. Boom! In the end, the seal smashed into Jian Chen with a tremendous weight well beyond what he could resist. Jian Chen let out a grunt. His organs were shaken up violently, and his body was in turmoil. A little bit of blood trickled out of his mouth. Afterwards, the seal continued all the way down with Jian Chen, falling out of the sky and mashing into the ground heavily like a mountain. It vanished from the surface of the earth instantly, becoming buried deep underground. Even with Jian Chen's extraordinary battle prowess that even the First Hall Master admitted he paled in comparison to, a tremendous distance that could not be made up for clearly still existed between him and the Dark Star Emperor. Originally, he had the profound sword chi. As soon as he unleashed the profound sword chi, he could even put up a fight if he actually confronted a first heavenly layer Chaotic Prime, but the Dark Star Emperor happened to have the soul-protecting bronze lamp. As soon as the lamp was unleashed, Jian Chen's profound sword chi became useless. In the air, the Dark Star Emperor's face was frosty. He said nothing at all as he took a step, also venturing deep underground. He wanted to retrieve the divine beast and continue with the great ceremony. Now that the great ceremony had been severely disrupted, the chances of failure had already increased drastically, but as long as he could retrieve the divine beast to be sacrificed, then there was still some hope of success. This also had to do with his opportunity to reach Chaotic Prime, and it also affected the fate of the entire Dark Star race. Even if there was only the slightest hope, the great ceremony had to continue. However, when the Dark Star Emperor entered the pit created by the seal, his face stiffened, as he was unable to sense Jian Chen's presence at all. Jian Chen was no longer in the pit anymore. Virtually at the same time, there was an explosion in the Dark Star Divine Hall. The teleportation formation established on the square outside the Dark Star Divine Hall was suddenly torn to pieces. A powerful strand of sword chi forcefully cut it to pieces. Jian Chen's figure had already appeared above the Dark Star Divine Hall before anyone had realized. The Dark Star Emperor let out a cold snort underground. He rushed out in a single instant and pressed towards Jian Chen with the might of a Chaotic Prime, arriving instantly. But at this moment, the laws of space rippled in Jian Chen's surroundings, and he suddenly vanished, appearing above the first Divine Hall like he had teleported. Before the First Hall Master could even respond, he stomped down heavily on the First Divine Hall. The entire First Divine Hall shook violently. A huge crack spread from Jian Chen's foot, rapidly expanding in all directions like a web, and the First Divine Hall's teleportation formation received a powerful attack and shattered loudly. After the teleportation formation shattered, the First Divine Hall that hovered in the air was unable to maintain its integrity either due to too many cracks. Soon afterwards, the entire First Divine Hall collapsed like that. The 10 Divine Halls, as well as the Dark Star Divine Hall, were god artifacts, but they were all damaged. Although they had been repaired later, they could not compare to when they were in perfect shape. With Jian Chen's current strength, apart from the Dark Star Divine Hall that was a high-quality god artifact, destroying the 10 Divine Halls that were all low-quality god artifacts was nothing difficult. After destroying the first Divine Hall, Jian Chen did not halt for even a moment, rushing towards the second Divine Hall. And, as he lifted his hand, he shot out huge strands of sword chi. Each strand of sword chi was completely white, radiating with blinding light as they shot towards the other Divine Halls at the same time. How dare you! On top of the Dark Star Divine Hall, the Dark Star Emperor's face was as cold as frost and killing intent surged through his eyes. He charged towards Jian Chen immediately. Near the second Divine Hall, the Hall Master Arna was also furious. He let out an explosive bellow and took action decisively to stop Jian Chen without any regard for the difference in strength that existed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2856. Unstoppable. Sensing Arna, who charged towards him with hostility, a sliver of hesitance flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. Jian Chen did feel reluctance over attacking this person who had once stood on his side to contend against the 5 divine halls. But very soon, his hesitation vanished completely, replaced by coldness. He would never forget how the Darkstar race had treated Sacred Feather. Not only had they drained all of his essence blood, but they even wanted to sacrifice his life in the end. And it was just so that they had a chance at breaking through to a higher realm of cultivation. In Jian Chen's eyes, they were already unforgivable for these actions. Even if he slaughtered them all and destroyed the entire Darkstar race, he did not think it would be overkill. With that, Jian Chen's eyes immediately became filled with killing intent. With a wave of his hand, another strand of sharp sword chi shot out, stabbing towards Arna mercilessly. With a boom, Jian Chen's sword chi forced Arna back. He flew backwards, directly smashing into the second divine hall. His face became bright red. After repelling Arna, Jian Chen arrived before the teleportation formation of the second divine hall. With a palm strike, tremendous power surged out and smashed the teleportation formation to pieces. At the same time, there was a great boom from the teleportation formations of the 3rd, 4th, 9th, and 10th divine halls. The sword chi Jian Chen shot out had destroyed them all. Only the 6th and 7th divine halls remained fine. Under the full strength of their respective hall masters, they had managed to block Jian Chen's sword chi in the end. The teleportation formation of the 8th divine hall was the only place Jian Chen had not attacked. Die, bastard. The Darkstar Emperor had already exploded with fury. He approached Jian Chen quickly. Right when he was about to strike, he never expected Jian Chen to have no interest in becoming caught up with him at all. The laws of space pulsed around Jian Chen. He had already vanished like he had teleported, arriving above the 4th divine hall in an instant. The moment he appeared, before the 6th hall master could even respond, he directly struck out, sending a palm strike towards the teleportation formation. Boom! The teleportation formation of the 6th divine hall had also been destroyed. Seeing how Jian Chen had destroyed teleportation formation upon teleportation formation and collapsed divine hall after divine hall right under his watch, the Darkstar Emperor immediately became frantic and seething with fury. With a wave of his hand, the seal flew up from underground, hovering over the capital city with an endless power of restraint as if he wanted to seal up the entire city and lock up the region of space, limiting Jian Chen's laws of space. Immediately, the space thickened like paste. Everyone felt like they were stuck in mud when they tried to move around. Everything became inconvenient. The laws of space were also affected to a certain degree. However, this effect was so light that it was negligible to Jian Chen, as his laws of space did not come from his own comprehension, but the spatial insect emperor. As a result, his usage and grasp over the laws of space had already surpassed those primordial realm experts who comprehended the laws of space by themselves. Spatial insects were exotic beasts born in space. They possessed a natural control over space, and spatial insect emperors were the monarchs among spatial insects. Jian Chen had absorbed the beast soul of the spatial insect emperor. Although his grasp over space had yet to reach the same level as the spatial insect emperor, it did bear some resemblance at the very least, so his compatibility with space was extremely high. Silently, Jian Chen vanished once again, leaving where he was instantly through the laws of space. The endless power of restraint from the seal in the air was unable to hinder him at all. In the next moment, a great rumble rang out from the 7th divine hall too. The elusive Jian Chen had easily destroyed the teleportation formation there. Bastard, die. The bell of suppression. The 7th hall master bellowed out. He seemed to have anticipated that Jian Chen would appear here, so he stopped caring about the condition of the teleportation formation. Instead, He had secretly begun preparing a powerful secret technique right from the beginning. As a result, the moment the teleportation formation was destroyed was also the moment when the bell of suppression was formed. It loomed over Jian Chen so fast that he was unable to react to it. This was the second time Jian Chen had witnessed the power of the bell of suppression. The first time was when he fought with Getty under the identity of Kun Tian. Back then, because he had to hide his strength, he put on the act that the bell of suppression had momentarily trapped him. As for now, Jian Chen pointed at the sky and emitted a streak of light with destructive chaotic force, which collided with the bell of suppression. This time, the bell of suppression was like a clay pot, cut to pieces by Jian Chen's strand of sword qi. Afterwards, Jian Chen arrived before Getty instantly with the laws of space. With a flash of light, he stabbed at Getty mercilessly. Getty was clad in god artifact armor and wielded a god artifact in hand. He was in his strongest state. Dazzling, golden light and surging flames poured out from his body. He used the laws of metal and laws of fire simultaneously, launching a strike as hard as he could. Boom! With a great rumble, the laws of metal on Getty collapsed immediately, while the roaring laws of fire turned into sparks, scattering across the sky. Spurt! Getty's face paled as he spat out a mouthful of blood, staggering backwards. Each step bore tremendous weight, causing the seventh divine hall to shake endlessly. He has the laws of space. Let's pin him down together so that he can't escape. The first hall master called out. A presence that belonged to a seventh heavenly layer infinite prime erupted at full strength, crushing down on Jian Chen aggressively. He could already tell that after having lost his god artifact, Jian Chen's battle prowess had fallen. His strength was no longer beyond his reach. Immediately, the second hall master Arna and the sixth hall master Irvin charged towards Jian Chen with the first hall master, forming an encirclement with the seventh hall master Getty. They wanted to restrain Jian Chen and buy some time for the Dark Star Emperor. The powerful presences and pressures from 3/6 heavenly layer and 1/7 heavenly layer infinite prime crushed down on Jian Chen without holding back at all. The colossal pressure and energy stirred up the space as much as possible, wanting to obstruct Jian Chen's laws of space. Tell me, where is Kun Tian exactly? The 10th Hall Master Feng Shui also charged towards Jian Chen without any regard in sorrow. At that moment, all of the Hall Masters from the 10 Divine Halls had taken action, as they all detected that Jian Chen's battle prowess had already plummeted by quite a bit after losing his god artifact. Even though they were still not his opponent if they fought alone, they could still put up a fight with so many people throwing themselves at him. At worst, they could delay him and prevent him from using the laws of space in time. However, they had completely underestimated Jian Chen's compatibility with the laws of space. Even though they did everything they could to disturb the space there, even making the space ripple and show signs of instability from their combined efforts, it was still not enough to prevent Jian Chen from using the laws of space. Jian Chen vanished eerily once more, changing the battlefield with the laws of space and avoiding contact with them. When he reappeared, he was already standing in front of the 8th Divine Hall's teleportation formation. You've finally come here. I haven't specially waited for you here in vain. But at this very moment, the Dark Star Emperor's cold voice rang out. His figure appeared in front of the teleportation formation too, within arm's reach of Jian Chen. Now, this was the actual Dark Star Emperor. The Dark Star Emperor had used a secret technique to conceal himself as early as when Jian Chen went out of his way to destroy the teleportation formations, lying in ambush near the teleportation formation of the 8th Divine Hall. As for the other figure that stood before everyone, that was equivalent to a clone. Now, the clone was currently dissolving. Who are you exactly? An outsider? No matter who you are, I'll tear your flesh from your bones, the Dark Star Emperor said with a bone-chilling voice. He struck out with his empty palm. The power of a chaotic prime filled the attack, directly freezing up space and trapping Jian Chen there. How presumptuous. Did you really think I didn't know you were lurking here? Jian Chen said coldly. He wielded his fingers like a sword and stabbed out. The moment he stabbed out, his vital energies and even his entire being seemed to meld into the space, merging as one perfectly. A small part of his arm, as well as the resplendent sword chi, seemed to stab into space. However, it also seemed like they had entered another world, no longer present here. The shadowless life-taking strike. The Dark Star Emperor's face changed abruptly. In that moment, he discovered to his shock that a powerful strand of sword chi had actually wormed into his body without any signs at all before slashing down viciously. Immediately, powerful sword chi erupted, and the Dark Star Emperor's organs instantly became heavily damaged. His vitality surged violently as sharp strands of sword chi penetrated his flesh and pierced through his skin from inside out, shooting out of his body. Immediately, the Dark Star Emperor's body seemed to become pregnant with countless strands of sword chi. They shot out of his body endlessly, and he trembled violently, his face filled with disbelief. Spurt. Finally, the Dark Star Emperor coughed up a mouthful of blood. The strike had injured him. What is this ability? The Dark Star Emperor exclaimed. Shock filled his face as his heart surged violently. He even staggered back in retreat. The energy behind his palm strike towards Jian Chen had been interrupted due to suddenly becoming heavily injured, which he withdrew. It was far too strange and far too wondrous. The sword chi had actually ignored all of his protective measures, as well as the difference in cultivation and comprehension. It seemed to have come from another space, directly appearing in his body and catching him off guard. Although the Dark Star Emperor had coughed up blood, Jian Chen felt no joy at all. Instead, he sighed gloomily inside, as he knew that while he had managed to heavily injure the Dark Star Emperor with the shadowless life-taking strike, this injury was not fatal to the Dark Star Emperor. With my current strength, it's still not enough to shake up chaotic primes. Jian Chen sighed inside. The Dark Star Emperor was far too powerful. If he had been some other ninth heavenly layer infinite prime, he would have sustained unimaginably heavy injuries even if he managed to survive the shadowless life-taking strike. However, the Dark Star Emperor had only sustained a mild wound. Dark Star Emperor, I will return. My grievances with your Dark Star race aren't over, Jian Chen said to the Dark Star Emperor coldly and flatly. Tossing that out, he turned around and vanished into the teleportation formation. Afterwards, the space around the teleportation formation trembled violently. Chaotic powers of space wreaked havoc, and the entire region suddenly collapsed. The teleportation formation of the 8th Divine Hall had also been completely obliterated in the collapsing space. All of the teleportation formations, from the 10 Divine Halls to even the Dark Star Divine Hall, had already been destroyed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2857, Going after the Medicinal Garden. With the destruction of the last teleportation formation, the intense battle that occurred over the capital city of the Dark Star race finally came to an end. That was because the many experts of the Dark Star race had already lost track of Jian Chen. They had no idea where he had fled to. Although the battle had ended, the chaotic storms of energy that pervaded the region still had not dispersed completely. They wreaked havoc above the capital city as whirlwinds, moving through the capital city and destroying countless structures, kicking up dust that shrouded the entire region. The battle that occurred today in the capital city was definitely the most intense battle that the Dark Star race had ever experienced after entering the Dark Star world. It touched on the highest realm of cultivation. Battles at the primordial realm could be described as devastating. From the battle between Jian Chen and the many primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race, they had virtually reduced this majestic and extremely prosperous capital city to ruins. The tall walls in the surroundings had collapsed completely, and none of the structures in the city were intact either. Even a few of the 10 divine halls that hovered in the air, symbolizing authority and status among the Dark Star race, had been destroyed. This loss, this setback, could be described as tremendous to the entire Dark Star race. Sigh, that person has fled from the capital city with the divine beast already, and he's skilled in the laws of space, so it'll probably be almost impossible to chase after him. With how everything has developed, the great ceremony. Sigh, it truly is our race's misfortune to actually have such a powerful outsider infiltrate us silently at such an important time. Is this the will of the heavens? Or should you say this is the mysterious arrangements of the grand exalt of the wood spirit's indestructible will? In the air, on the altar, the virtuous sage of heaven sighed constantly in dejection. His voice was filled with pity and regret, as well as a deep sense of helplessness that everyone could clearly notice. And right now, he seemed even fainter as an illusionary figure. It was rather difficult to distinguish whether the virtuous sage of heaven had become like this because of overexerting himself to host the great ceremony, or because of the backlash of a certain energy due to the failure of the ceremony. The Dark Star Emperor, the 10 Hall Masters, and all the Vice Hall Masters gathered on the 8th Divine Hall. All of them stared at the destroyed teleportation formation as their hearts blazed with fury. Deep resentment was present in everybody's eyes. With how everything had played out, they all understood that the great ceremony this time had ended in complete failure. Their great wish of being able to break through to Chaotic Prime could not come true either. Feng Shui was also nearby, grief-stricken and in a complete daze. An outsider. That person must have been an outsider. A Vice Hall Master ground his teeth. He's far too powerful. If he belonged to our Darkstar race, he definitely would be someone who made a name for himself tens of millions of years ago or even earlier. It's impossible for him to remain out of the limelight for all this time. The only way to explain it is he's an outsider, but outsiders over a millennium old can't enter our Darkstar world. Don't tell me that person is not even 1,000 years old, that's impossible. He's so powerful that he can even maneuver around a little with his majesty. How can such a terrifying expert not even be 1,000 years old? The many Vice Hall Masters were unable to keep calm anymore. All of them were shocked. The 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 5th Divine Hall, Bing Yuan, Taro, and Do Wujin, remained silent. They were despondent as if they had received a colossal blow. Search for him. All of you, search for him. Send out everyone we have. Even if we have to turn over every single rock in the Darkstar world, we have to find him. The Darkstar Emperor's tone was icy cold as he basically spoke through his teeth. In the past, he had always seemed relaxed and at ease before the upper echelon of the Darkstar race. Nothing could influence his mood. He would remain calm and composed no matter what happened. But now, the Darkstar Emperor's face was sunken, and his cold eyes were filled with killing intent, making the upper echelon of the Darkstar race shiver. The Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters all groaned inside. Not only did this outsider of unknown identity possess terrifyingly powerful disguises, but his battle prowess was extremely frightening too. Combined with the laws of space he had grasped, finding someone like that in the Darkstar world was truly as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Not to mention that there were the 2 world mountains that they could not set foot in so easily within the Darkstar world. If he fled into the 2 world mountains, how were they supposed to find him? Their chances were no longer just slim. Instead, it was completely hopeless. But at this moment, all of the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters present, as well as the Darkstar Emperor, sensed something. Afterwards, everyone could not help but take out a tablet from their space rings. Right now, all of the tablets produced a blinding light, flashing urgently. When they saw the tablets, all of their faces changed immediately. Oh no, it's the medicinal garden. The formations of the medicinal garden have sent warnings. The medicinal garden is under attack, it's the outsider. It must be him, he's at the medicinal garden. Damn it, how does he know the existence of the medicinal garden? Arg. It's over, it's all over. He already knows the many secrets of our race, that bastard. That person is an utter bastard. He purposely destroyed the teleportation formations, and his final target was actually the medicinal garden. He's delaying our arrival to the medicinal garden with all that. Above the 8th Divine Hall, the expressions of all the primordial realm experts of the Darkstar race changed drastically. They became extremely frantic. The medicinal garden was one of the greatest sources of wealth of their race. If something happened, the losses would be tremendous. That was because the many god-tier heavenly resources planted in there had been nurtured over countless years by exhausting tremendous amounts of divine crystals. They were all important cultivation resources effective on primordial realm experts. They could not afford to lose them at all. The Dark Star Emperor had vanished already. His figure turned into a blur, and he rushed off towards the medicinal garden at top speed, moving even faster than lightning. Afterwards, the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters all followed along closely. They used their full strength and flew towards the medicinal garden as quickly as they could. The capital city was extremely distant from the medicinal garden. Even primordial realm experts would take quite a lot of time to travel such a distance. In the past, they had teleportation formations that could directly send them there, but the teleportation formations had been destroyed now, so all they could do was fly over there manually. That was because only the 10 Divine Halls and the Darkstar Divine Hall possessed teleportation formations leading to the medicinal garden. Elsewhere, in an unknown, extremely remote region among the Darkstar race, great pulses of energy swept through the surroundings. Jianghu currently hovered above the medicinal garden as his hand shone brightly, assaulting the medicinal garden with full strength. Every single attack from him was vicious, making the protective formations of the medicinal garden tremble violently. Every single attack would exhaust tremendous amounts of energy in the formations. The Darkstar Emperor had personally cast down the formations that protected the central region. They were so powerful that they could block the attacks of 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes. However, the energy that supported the operation of the formations was not endless. As a matter of fact, there had not even been a lot of energy prepared for them. As a result, after a few attacks, although Jianghu failed to personally destroy the formation, he did forcefully exhaust all the energy of the formations. As such, the formations collapsed on themselves. Immediately, the central region of the medicinal garden became exposed. Without the restriction of the formations, the surging energy condensed in there immediately spread out, scattering in all directions. The fruit of nurturing ways located at the very center shimmered in the mist like pure energy. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2858, Temporal Acceleration. Gazing at the evolving fruit of nurturing ways, Jian Chen's emotions stirred excitedly. He seemed to be able to see his breakthrough with the way of the sword. The formations in the medicinal garden are not only for protective purposes. They also have a surveillance function. From the moment I attacked the formation, the upper echelon of the Darkstar race has known my position. They're rushing over as quickly as they can. There's not a lot of time left for me. As a matter of fact, it's extremely tight. I can't waste even a moment. I hope the fruit of nurturing ways can evolve a little faster, Jianghu thought. He waved his hand, and 3 white pieces of jade flew out of his space ring, hovering around the fruit of nurturing ways. These pieces of jade were the ones containing the laws of time Jianghu had obtained from the Heavenly Lightning Clan. As the laws of time in the pieces of jade came into effect, the small region of space immediately blurred. The flow of time increased abruptly. The fruit of nurturing ways that originally evolved slowly now evolved much faster due to the influence from the acceleration of time. With that, the energy in the medicinal garden immediately decreased rapidly, forming a great vortex of energy that the fruit of nurturing ways absorbed. The fraction of pure energy that had scattered into the surroundings due to losing the restraint of the formations immediately swept back, turning into a storm of energy as it plunged into the fruit of nurturing ways. Currently, the rate at which the fruit of nurturing ways absorbed energy could be described as incomparably terrifying. That was because the flow of time in the region of space the fruit of nurturing ways occupied had already sped up. Naturally, the rate at which the fruit absorbed energy also multiplied by a similar amount. The divine crystals stored in the medicinal garden depleted at an unprecedented rate. The several hundred million supreme-grade divine crystals that Jianghu recently replenished were already close to running out after such a short time. Jianghu had anticipated all of this. Even though he had already used up a portion of the several hundred billion supreme-grade divine crystals the 100 Saint City had offered up to him, he still had plenty remaining. Jianghu moved through each region of the medicinal garden. Whenever he waved his hand, he would toss out several 100 million divine crystals as replenishment, but this time, he did not only replenish the divine crystals for the regions that belonged to the 5th, 6th, and 7th divine halls he was responsible for. He also filled the regions belonging to the 7 other divine halls to the brim. The fruit of nurturing ways required far too much energy when evolving. If the central region was unable to provide enough energy, then it could drain energy from the surrounding 10 regions of the medicinal garden. As a result, in order to ensure the fruit of nurturing ways had sufficient energy to evolve, all Jianghu could do was handle the supply of energy for the entire medicinal garden alone. 3 temporal crystals are far too slow. With the Dark Star Emperor's strength, it won't take him too long even if he flies over here from the capital city. According to the current rate at which the fruit evolves, it'll probably be very difficult for it to complete its evolution before the Dark Star Emperor arrives. Will using a few more temporal crystals increase the flow of time? Jianghu sank into his thoughts as he stared at the temporal crystals around the fruit of nurturing ways. Afterwards, he did exactly what he was thinking, immediately tossing out another 3 temporal crystals. The 6 temporal crystals unleashed their laws of time together while Jianghu observed from the outskirts. Even though he was unable to accurately determine how many times faster time had become, there was a visible increase. The time has sped up by around 50%, and when 6 temporal crystals are used, the rate at which their laws of time are depleted has lessened too. Jianghu's eyes lit up slightly, immediately tossing in another 3 temporal crystals. As such, a total of 9 temporal crystals now surrounded the fruit of nurturing ways. The 9 temporal crystals gave off the power of the laws of time together and distorted space. As a result, the flow of time in the region of space where the fruit of nurturing ways resided proceeded at a shocking rate as if a millennium passed with each moment. 9 temporal crystals are only 20% faster than 6. The temporal acceleration seems to have reached a limit too. Even if I add more temporal crystals, the flow of time won't increase. It'll only last longer. Jianghu frowned slightly and felt a hint of urgency. If the fruit of nurturing ways could not complete its evolution before the Dark Star Emperor had arrived, many more variables would definitely come into play. He had the laws of space and the chaotic body. Even if he could not defeat the Dark Star Emperor, he could simply leave. However, the issue was if the Dark Star Emperor embraced a scorched earth policy, where he would refuse to let anyone obtain what he could not, going as far as destroying the fruit of nurturing ways. If an expert with the battle prowess of a chaotic prime was determined to destroy the fruit of nurturing ways, Jianghu truly was unable to stop them with his current level of strength. Afterwards, Jianghu constantly moved between the various regions of the medicinal garden, replenishing divine crystals for the entire place and maintaining the supply of energy. The tremendous amount of divine crystals he had received from the 100 Saint City depleted rapidly. He had already used up 18 temporal crystals from the Heavenly Lightning clan, with only 12 remaining. Almost an hour later, what Jianghu had worried about finally ended up happening. The Dark Star Emperor had arrived in the region of the medicinal garden before the fruit of nurturing ways had ripened. Even from very far away, the Dark Star Emperor's presence, filled with raging anger and killing intent, reached over from the distant horizon. By now, all the god-tier heavenly resources the Dark Star race had planted in the medicinal garden apart from the evolving fruit of nurturing ways had ended up in Jianghu's space ring. All that was left were a few heavenly resources that were not worth much and had yet to fully ripen. Jianghu could not be bothered with picking them, allowing them to continue growing in the medicinal garden. He has still made it here in the end. The fruit of nurturing ways evolution is getting faster and faster. I have to stop the Dark Star Emperor. Sensing the Dark Star Emperor's presence, Jianghu let out a sigh inside. With a wave of his hand, several tens of million divine crystals landed in the medicinal garden, turning the surroundings of the fruit into a small mountain. Afterwards, he took out the remaining 12 temporal crystals from his space ring. He suddenly vanished, having left this place with the laws of space already. Tens of million kilometers away from the medicinal garden, the Dark Star Emperor's face was pale with anger as his presence surged violently, rapidly approaching the medicinal garden with lightning speed. The 10 Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters had fallen severely behind due to being unable to keep up with the Dark Star Emperor's speed. But at this moment, a colossal strand of sword chi appeared above the Dark Star Emperor's head extremely suddenly. As if it had merged with space, it completely ignored all spatial distances and stabbed right at the Dark Star Emperor. The Dark Star Emperor let out a furious bellow and gushing energy erupted in his body, forming a thick barrier instantly. When the sword chi struck the protective barrier, it immediately slowed down. The Dark Star Emperor directly ignored the strand of sword chi. He clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a punch upwards. Bang! The Dark Star Emperor's punch penetrated even space itself. The entire region of space pulsed violently. As black cracks spread rapidly, Jian Chen, who had been hiding in space, was forced out. As soon as he saw Jian Chen, the Dark Star Emperor's eyes shone with raging killing intent. He said nothing at all, throwing another punch at Jian Chen. At the same time, the seal flew out from his body, swelling to the size of a mountain in the air. The vast energy and pressure formed a restraining force, interfering with the space there. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2859, Buying Time. The Dark Star Emperor did not hold back at all, using his full strength right off the bat. His battle prowess on par with chaotic primes erupted in the surroundings. Every single move and strike from him could be described as devastating. In a direct confrontation with the Dark Star Emperor, Jian Chen completely lost the upper hand. He was not the Dark Star Emperor's opponent at all. A single punch from the Dark Star Emperor smashed apart the sword chi he had condensed. Afterwards, their punches collided in the air, like the collision between two planets, producing a deafening rumble. Even large swathes of space collapsed. Jian Chen's right sleeve was immediately reduced to tatters. His entire right arm spasmed in an extremely abnormal way before rapidly turning red. Blood that possessed the presence of chaotic force oozed out of his pores. The Dark Star Emperor's punch was far too powerful. An attack at the first heavenly layer of chaotic prime was still not something Jian Chen could handle right now. The forceful clash had shaken all of Jian Chen's flesh in his right arm to pieces. His blood vessels were severed, and even the bones in his hand became cracked. The great force threw him away. The Dark Star Emperor remained as still as a mountain. He was imposing and unstoppable. He immediately pursued after Jian Chen, throwing a punch at the empty air. The destructive attack directly approached Jian Chen. This time, Jian Chen did not choose to receive it forcefully. He vanished extremely suddenly, directly ignoring the restraint the seal had placed over the space. At the same time, the chaotic force in his body channeled madly into his right arm, completely unleashing the extraordinary recovery rate of the chaotic body. His heavily damaged right arm immediately began to recover at an unbelievable speed. Afterwards, the space around him pulsed gently, and he used the laws of space again, changing position like he had teleported. Basically, in the moment Jian Chen vanished, the space he lingered in suddenly collapsed. All of the space within 30 meters shattered instantly. The Dark Star Emperor's figure gradually appeared in the shattered space, his face pale from anger. Afterwards, the Dark Star Emperor unleashed a storm-like barrage of attacks. He punched out again and again, piercing the sky with great force and making the entire region shake. As for Jian Chen, he used the laws of space and constantly changed position elusively, maneuvering around the Dark Star Emperor. He understood extremely well how great of a difference existed between him and the Dark Star Emperor. The profound sword chi was useless against the Dark Star Emperor, while the shadowless life-taking strike could only cause some mild injuries. In short, none of the techniques and methods he possessed right now posed any threat to the Dark Star Emperor. As he maneuvered about, Jian Chen pushed the laws of space to the limit. Against the Dark Star Emperor, the laws of space instead became when he relied on the most. Fortunately, my laws of space came from the Spatial Insect Emperor, so they're highly compatible with space. Otherwise, if I had been some other primordial realm expert who comprehended the laws of space, there'll probably be nothing that I can do in this region filled with storms of energy. My usage of space would definitely be severely obstructed, Jiangchen thought. His primary objective was not to defeat the Dark Star Emperor, but to keep him busy for a while. But even with that being the case, he faced danger several times when the Dark Star Emperor intercepted him and forced them to clash. Every single clash would cause Jiangchen rather heavy wounds. As for the Dark Star Emperor, he became more and more furious, gradually losing patience against Jiangchen, who was as slippery as a fish, using the laws of space to run around and avoid capture no matter what he did. Suddenly, the Dark Star Emperor stopped chasing Jiangchen around everywhere. Instead, he stood where he was and formed seals with both hands, using a powerful secret technique. Immediately, the tremendous aura of the world appeared. The energy of the entire Dark Star world gathered over wildly. Jiangchen even felt that the might of the heavens had already locked onto his presence, something he could not avoid. A god-tier battle skill. Jiangchen's face lit up, and his eyes immediately flashed. A god-tier battle skill, an expert on par with a chaotic prime cast, would have unimaginably great power. The Dark Star Emperor had only done this because he was helpless against Jiangchen's laws of space. As a result, he was forced to use a god-tier battle skill despite the absolute difference in strength. He wanted to lock onto Jiangchen with the pressure of the god-tier battle skill so that he could not escape. If he were in the capital city, the Dark Star Emperor never would have dared to use a god-tier battle skill, as the power was far too great. Once he used it, the entire capital city would be flattened to the ground. Now that he resided in the wilderness, this obviously was not something he had to consider. Do you think you can do whatever you want in front of me just with the laws of space? The Dark Star Emperor ground his teeth. At that moment, the might of the heavens surged, and energy flooded out. The Dark Star world's entire sky began to twist violently as the god-tier battle skill charged up. Finally, the Dark Star Emperor unleashed the god-tier battle skill. It condensed into a huge, dark star in the sky, radiating with a colossal pressure. It directly smashed towards Jiangchen as if it contained the power of waves. The dark star had already locked onto Jiangchen's presence. He was unable to avoid its pursuit even with the laws of space. It was truly undodgeable and unavoidable. Only a single path lay ahead of him, which was to receive it forcefully. However, if he were to take on a god-tier battle skill from a chaotic prime with his current level of strength, even the chaotic body could not withstand it. Even if he managed to escape with his life intact, it would still cost him. However, Jiangchen did not panic at all. His eyes became extremely bright as he stared straight at the dark star that hurtled over with a devastating pressure. His lips curled into a mysterious smile. God-tier battle skills are useless against me, Jiangchen murmured softly. The will of the ultimate way of the sword rushed into the air, instantly sensing the connection between the god-tier battle skill and the ways of the world. The connection established between the Dark Star Emperor's god-tier battle skill and the ways of the world is clearly much stronger than Kuan Tian's. This should be due to his strength. However, that's still not a problem for me. Jiangchen's ultimate will immediately turned into a sharp edge, severing the connection between the god-tier battle skill and the ways of the world without the slightest hesitation. Immediately, the Dark Star Emperor conjured deflated like a balloon. All of its pressure vanished instantly, turning into a cluster of pure energy in the end, reduced to the most ordinary attack. Even though the cluster of energy was still formidable, it had lost the various presence of ways that belonged to a god-tier battle skill, nowhere near enough to threaten Jiangchen anymore. Most importantly, Jiangchen had broken free from the god-tier battle skill locking onto him. With a flash, Jiangchen had already changed his position with the laws of space. The dark star that had lost its power as a god-tier battle skill struck the ground heavily. The energy at the level of chaotic primes erupted, shaking up the surroundings. What exactly did you do to my god-tier battle skill? Why has the power of my god-tier battle skill plummeted, no longer possessing the might of the heavens? The Dark Star Emperor's eyes widened as he stared at Jiangchen in disbelief. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2860. Going straight for the medicinal garden. The Darkstar Emperor was indeed shocked. The God-tier battle skill he used was a technique of his race that had been passed down through the generations, and its power was otherworldly. This God-tier battle skill alone possessed the power to injure opponents at higher cultivation levels. Originally, the Darkstar Emperor thought it was already overkill for him to use a God-tier battle skill against Jian Chen, whose cultivation was not even near his. If it were not for the fact that he was helpless against Jian Chen's laws of space, he truly did not want to use a God-tier battle skill. However, never did he imagine that the God-tier battle skill he had decided on using after deep contemplation would go from startling powerful to losing all of the might of heaven it had been imbued with in a single moment. As such, the devastatingly powerful God-tier battle skill had been reduced to a clump of the most ordinary energy. It was completely unbelievable. The Darkstar Emperor understood very well there was nothing wrong with his God-tier battle skill. The person before him must have used an inconceivable ability to interrupt his God-tier battle skill. It left him utterly shocked. Regarding information and news of the Saints' world, their Darkstar race had learned quite a lot from the outsiders through their various avenues. The Darkstar race had even grasped some relatively secretive information. Without any exaggeration, the Darkstar race had been trapped in the Darkstar world for countless years, but they understood the Saints' world to a certain degree even if they did not understand all of it. However, Jian Chen's ability that could render God-tier battle skills useless was completely unheard of. He understood far too well how terrifying something like this was. God-tier battle skills could be described as a colossal trump card to any cultivator. They were a last resort, able to save lives when used at critical times. If he had grasped a method that could ignore God-tier battle skills, did that not mean all the experts he confronted from here on out had lost their greatest trump card? It was far too horrendous of a thought to consider. The Darkstar Emperor finally understood what kind of power this outsider who had destroyed the great ceremony of the Darkstar race had in store. He has reached his current realm of cultivation in under a millennium. Killing intent surged in the Darkstar Emperor's eyes. Afterwards, he refused to give up. Energy channeled through his body and rapidly leaked out. He used a God-tier battle skill again. The way he interrupts God-tier battle skills definitely isn't as simple and easy as it seems for him. Perhaps it takes a tremendous toll for him to interrupt it each time. I refuse to believe he can interrupt them forever. The Darkstar Emperor bit the bullet. God-tier battle skills caused far too great of a toll, and the God-tier battle skills he used were already close to medium quality. Hence, although when the energy he had accumulated within him over countless years had become extremely dense, he could not cast them too many times. Immediately, a tremendous pressure flooded the surroundings. The Darkstar Emperor's God-tier battle skill immediately finished charging up, but this time, it did not conjure a dark star. Instead, it condensed a sword, shining with blinding light and giving off devastating might. Jian Chen's lips curled into a mocking sneer. He immediately condensed a sword with the will of the ultimate way of the sword and slashed down at the obscure connection between the God-tier battle skill and the ways of the world. It was as if a zither string had snapped. Without the connection with the ways of the world, the God-tier battle skill immediately lost all of its divine might, and its power plummeted. I'd like to see how many more times you can destroy them. The vicious light in the Darkstar Emperor's eyes shone brightly. He was not discouraged at all. He used a God-tier battle skill for the third time. With the third God-tier battle skill, a huge hand of energy appeared in the sky, blotting out the sun as if it could overwhelm the entire world with a flip. With the fourth God-tier battle skill, a colossal eye appeared out of thin air. As the eye opened and closed, it gave off a might that could annihilate everything in existence. With the fifth God-tier battle skill, the Darkstar Emperor summoned the blurry figure of the ancestor of the Darkstar race. Even though he was composed of energy, he was wrapped in the aura of ways, possessing the pressure of the great ways. As such, even the 3,000 laws began to pulse at varying degrees. The appearance of the Grand Exalt's figure did send a chill down Jian Chen's spine, but it was still a battle skill after all. It was only borrowing off the various auras that the ways of the world possessed. When Jian Chen severed the connection between the two, the startlingly powerful God-tier battle skill immediately turned into a toothless tiger. It caused a shocking disturbance, but its actual strength had already plummeted. The Dark Star Emperor used a total of 5 God-tier battle skills, where every single one of them was different. This also left Jian Chen astounded at the number of God-tier battle skills the Dark Star Emperor had grasped, and he believed this was not all the God-tier battle skills the Dark Star Emperor knew. The will of his ultimate way of the sword had stopped all 5 God-tier battle skills. Fortunately, my ultimate way of the sword trumps God-tier battle skills, or I really wouldn't be able to keep the Dark Star Emperor busy, Jian Chen thought. Through these clashes, he had already understood he could neglect God-tier battle skills those below Chaotic Prime used. He could also nullify God-tier battle skills first Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes used. But as the opponent became stronger, the connection between the God-tier battle skill and the ways of the world would definitely become even tougher. By then, whether he could nullify them as easily as now still had to be tested. It actually takes no toll on you at all to nullify my God-tier battle skills? The Dark Star Emperor did not continue with his God-tier battle skills. The 5 consecutive uses had taken an extremely great toll on him. Of course, what mattered the most was he discovered that he seemed to be wrong. From Jian Chen's expression, he could already tell that it did not seem as difficult as he imagined it to be for him to nullify the God-tier battle skills. The toll it has taken on me is almost negligible. Dark Star Emperor, would you like to try your other God-tier battle skills? The Dark Star Emperor stopped attacking, so Jian Chen stopped too, maintaining his distance from the Dark Star Emperor as he confronted him from afar. The Dark Star Emperor squinted slightly, producing a chilling light. He said emotionlessly, "If you wanted to leave, I really wouldn't be able to stop you, but you happen to have chosen to stay, to fight a battle with me here that you have no chance of winning. You're buying time." The Dark Star Emperor, guessing his objective, did not surprise Jian Chen. He said ambiguously, "Dark Star Emperor, aren't you interested in why I'm opposing your Dark Star race? I will naturally get to the bottom of this, but I can't let your scheme succeed. You're keeping me busy probably because you've already accelerated the growth of the fruit of nurturing ways with the 30 pieces of jade with the laws of time. Kuan Tian, oh Kuan Tian, you really have hidden your intentions well. When I first heard that you obtained the 30 pieces of jade, I actually believed you, thinking you had collected them with intentions of researching them. Never did I expect your final objective would be connected to the fruit of nurturing ways our race had tended to for countless years. Since our race cannot use the fruit of nurturing ways, then I won't let anyone else take advantage of it even if I have to destroy it." With that, the Dark Star Emperor turned into a streak of light, rushing towards the medicinal garden with great speed, completely ignoring Jian Chen. Jian Chen's expression changed suddenly. The worst-case scenario he had been worrying about still ended up happening. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2861, All-Out Obstruction. The fruit of nurturing ways is only a short moment away from ripening. I have to stop him, Jian Chen thought. Resolve filled his eyes, and he suddenly vanished. The Dark Star Emperor was very fast, but he was still no comparison to Jian Chen with his laws of space. The power of space pulsed, and Jian Chen had already crossed a vast distance, appearing before the Dark Star Emperor like he had teleported. As soon as he appeared, he condensed a powerful strand of sword chi and stabbed out violently. The Dark Star Emperor already understood Jian Chen's objectives. He did not slow down at all. His fists were unstoppable, directly throwing a punch at the sword chi. As for Jian Chen, he had already changed his position through the laws of space in the moment the Dark Star Emperor struck out. He silently appeared behind the Dark Star Emperor, and with a flash, another strand of sword chi slashed out. As soon as the Dark Star Emperor punched through Jian Chen's first strand of sword chi, he sensed the attack from behind. Without any hesitation, his dense, protective energy erupted, encapsulating him in a sturdy barrier. When the sword chi came into contact with the barrier, it immediately slowed down. Even though it had only slowed down for a moment, it earned the Dark Star Emperor, who had been traveling at full speed and fought in a hurry, a moment to catch his breath. He immediately threw a punch backwards, shattering the sword chi behind him too. However, when he smashed through the second strand of sword chi, the Dark Star Emperor's heart skipped a beat from a sense of danger. To his side, a strand of sword chi appeared silently, stabbing out towards him with lightning speed like a nimble snake's forked tongue. Spurt. The sword chi penetrated the Dark Star Emperor's protective energy, leaving behind a bone-deep wound on his waist. Bright red blood flowed out. The Dark Star Emperor completely ignored the wound on his waist. He let out a violent growl and slammed his hand against the space forcefully, causing a large area of it to shatter. However, he did not find a single trace of Jian Chen. Suddenly, the feeling of danger appeared again. Above the Dark Star Emperor, a strand of resplendent sword chi emerged from space, stabbing down towards the top of his head. The Dark Star Emperor was unable to contain his anger. He had never thought this outsider who could not even withstand a strike from him would actually injure him while he was distracted from traveling at full speed. Who was he? He was the Dark Star Emperor, a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime, publicly recognized as the greatest within the Dark Star race, an existence that could rival chaotic primes in battle prowess. Despite that, someone whose cultivation was well below his had injured him. This was definitely the greatest humiliation the Dark Star Emperor had ever experienced in his life. That was because he was the embodiment of invincibility. However, right when the Dark Star Emperor wanted to throw up a punch and crush the sword chi from overhead, his expression changed drastically, and he could not help but spurt with blood from his mouth. The blood was mixed with many pieces of his organs. The strange strand of sword chi he had experienced in the capital city had burst through all of his defenses and silently appeared in his body again, directly assaulting his organs. Just what is this ability? The Dark Star Emperor was shocked. He truly was helpless against the sword chi that suddenly appeared in his body. He could not come up with any countermeasures at all, as the strand of sword chi could ignore all energy protection and protective treasures. It was as if it had emerged from another space, appearing in his body right from the beginning. There were no prior signs, catching him off guard completely. The Dark Star Emperor had already become quite fearful of Jian Chen's shadowless life-taking strike, as he understood that while the shadowless life-taking strike was unable to cause him too much harm, the shadowless life-taking strike would definitely grow in power as Jian Chen became stronger. Given time, Jian Chen would reach the same realm of cultivation as him. By then, could he still endure the attack of the shadowless life-taking strike? Delayed, the strand of sword chi that appeared above the Dark Star Emperor had already fallen down. It was only a foot away from the top of the Dark Star Emperor's head. Just when the sword chi would land on the Dark Star Emperor's head at any time, the seal that had shrunk to the size of a fist appeared. The seal hovered over the Dark Star Emperor's head, blocking the sword chi's path. With a boom, the sword chi struck the seal. The seal did not even waver, while the sword chi collapsed automatically. Jian Chen's figure appeared in front of the Dark Star Emperor. His body seemed to be permanently merged with space, making him fade in and out of visibility. Sometimes, he was clear, and other times, he was illusionary. He felt like a wisp of smoke, like he could disperse at any time. His usage of the laws of space had already neared perfection. He had not developed this through training and effort. Instead, he was endowed with this advantage after absorbing the spatial insect emperor's beast soul. It's a pity that my comprehension of the laws of space is far too low. And, the many attacks and ways to use the laws of space are completely useless against the Dark Star Emperor, Jian Chen thought. His current comprehension of the laws of space remained around the second heavenly layer of infinite prime, which was why he could only use the laws of space to change position and combine it with the laws of the sword to launch attacks against the Dark Star Emperor who was on par with a chaotic prime. The laws of space were his most powerful method of attack right now. If his laws of space surpassed the Dark Star Emperor's cultivation, then he only had to change the spatial distance between them. That would be enough to trap the Dark Star Emperor almost permanently. He could not cross the distance even if he spent a few years traveling. Dark Star Emperor, you can't become distracted when you're facing someone in battle, alright? I might not be as strong as you, but I can still injure you. If you continue like this, I might even have a sliver of a chance to kill you. Here Jiangchen blocked the Dark Star Emperor's path and smiled faintly, but when he reached the last few words, his tone became especially frigid. His eyes surged with killing intent. At this moment, a powerful pulse of laws and ways appeared from the medicinal garden far away. Gazing into the distance, it was even possible to see the sky there become a deep blue. The fruit of nurturing ways is about to ripen. Jiangchen and the Dark Star Emperor both took note of this phenomenon, and they thought of the same thing. Just by you? You better piss off. The Dark Star Emperor wasted no more time. He let out a furious roar and made the shrunken seal hover over his head before summoning out a triangular shield that hovered behind him. He directly lunged towards Jiangchen like a vicious tiger. Stay right here. Jiangchen bellowed out as well. The fruit of nurturing ways was about to ripen. Every moment counted now. Afterwards, his figure separated from the space. He exploded with light, and chaotic force surged violently through his body as he turned himself into a huge sword. He thrusted towards the Dark Star Emperor madly as he radiated with sword chi. The Dark Star Emperor threw a punch, clashing violently with the sword chi. The sound of a clap of thunder immediately erupted in space. This time was one of the few times Jiangchen had used his full strength to directly confront the Dark Star Emperor ever since they began fighting. Just the collision this time made space shatter and the surroundings collapse. Violent energy spewed out into the world, destroying all. The Dark Star Emperor's punch sent Jiangchen flying. The glow he gave off dimmed as blood spurted out of his mouth, already heavily injured. The Dark Star Emperor, who had originally been speeding towards the medicinal garden, came to a forceful halt. He took 3 steps back uncontrollably as surprise filled his face. What a tough body and what a rapid recovery rate. With what you're capable of, you're definitely not some nobody in the saints' world. Just who are you exactly? But soon afterwards, the Dark Star Emperor shook his head and said coldly, no matter who you are, none of it is important anymore. You've obstructed our great ceremony. You cannot be forgiven. Once I destroy the fruit of nurturing ways, I'll completely wipe you from existence, even if I have to rally the entire race to cast the ultimate curse the ancestor left behind. An expert who can enter the Dark Star world, so powerful and so difficult to kill, is enough for our race to pay a great price and cast the ultimate curse. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2862, finally obtained. After the murmur, the Dark Star Emperor continued flying towards the medicinal garden without any regard over whether his punch had sent Jiangchen flying or not, as he knew that Jiangchen's laws of space were wondrous. Even if he chased after him while possessing the upper hand, he could slip away with the laws of space. The fruit of nurturing ways was what mattered. He knew exactly what its effects were. A high-grade god-tier fruit of nurturing ways that had evolved perfectly could not end up in this outsider's hands no matter what. To the other side, Jiangchen's figure that had been launched away suddenly vanished. When he reappeared, most of his wounds had already recovered. He continued his charge towards the Dark Star Emperor while wrapped in sword chi, wanting to slow down the Dark Star Emperor and buy time for the fruit of nurturing ways. The fruit of nurturing ways was still in the process of evolving and had not completely ripened yet. However, with the temporal acceleration of the 30 pieces of jade, the time it spent evolving had been minimized. As a result, he only had to keep the Dark Star Emperor busy for a moment. When the color reflected in the sky in the distance became an extremely gorgeous array of colors, it would be when the fruit of nurturing ways had truly ripened. You overestimate yourself. This is all but a futile effort, the Dark Star Emperor called out. Immediately, the seal over his head flew out to receive Jiangchen. However, right when the seal was about to strike Jiangchen, Jianghu suddenly changed his position and appeared elsewhere, forcing the Dark Star Emperor to fight back with punches. Bang! With that, the sword chi shattered from the Dark Star Emperor's punch, but it was only sword chi this time. Jianghu was not present. In the next moment, Jianghu emerged from space in another direction, striking out like a venomous snake. The Dark Star Emperor punched out again and again. As he shattered Jianghu's attack, he also launched Jianghu far away. This sight repeated again and again. The fruit of nurturing ways was about to ripen, and Jianghu could no longer care about the cost either. He was completely paying with his body to delay the Dark Star Emperor. Even he had no idea how many attacks from the Dark Star Emperor he had endured. The Dark Star Emperor's attacks were far too violent, where every strike could cause him heavy injuries. If it were not for the extreme defenses and startling recovery of his chaotic body, he probably never could have lasted until now. However, the effects he had achieved through paying such great costs were extremely evident. The Dark Star Emperor's advance had slowed down. The Dark Star Emperor was irritated, feeling more and more shocked by the strength of the chaotic body on the inside. Currently, Jianghu was basically unkillable in his eyes. He would not die no matter how he beat him up. Regardless of how severe his wounds were, he could recover rapidly. Whenever he thought he could not last much longer, he could always appear right in front of him again with the laws of space, and his battle prowess did not plummet much at all. If the Dark Star Emperor did not block, Jianghu could even threaten him to a certain degree. During this time, the Dark Star Emperor even used another god-tier battle skill instantly, thinking that Jianghu was already heavily injured and probably lacked the ability to disrupt his god-tier battle skill. However, the end result left the Dark Star Emperor disappointed. The god-tier battle skill he used to deal with Jianghu when he was heavily injured failed to achieve anything. The moment the god-tier battle skill appeared, it immediately deflated like a balloon, losing all of its power. Instead, he was heavily exhausted because of using god-tier battle skills consecutively. He had also tried using the seal and the triangular shield to block Jianghu and prevent him from obstructing his advance, but Jianghu's laws of space were far too elusive. The two god artifacts were unable to cover his entire body, so openings always existed. In the end, Jianghu would merely target these openings with his attacks, forcing the Dark Star Emperor to block. Jianghu's wounds became more and more severe. Most of his flesh had vanished. As such, only his skeleton was visible for the upper half of his body, and many of the bones had already shattered completely. His injuries were far too severe, already reaching a level where it was horrendous to behold. The recovery rate of his chaotic body had completely fallen behind the rate at which he was injured, while the Dark Star Emperor inched closer to the medicinal garden. He was unable to stop the Dark Star Emperor's advance completely. He could only temporarily slow him down. 8 million kilometers. 5 million kilometers. The Dark Star Emperor got closer and closer to the medicinal garden. He approached 2 million kilometers away very soon. With the Dark Star Emperor's battle prowess at chaotic prime, he only needed to be 1 million kilometers away, and he could use his great energy to destroy the medicinal garden from afar. As he watched the Dark Star Emperor gradually approach the medicinal garden in an unstoppable manner, Jianghu's heart sank slightly. If the fruit of nurturing ways were not evolving, he could directly pluck it and go. Although mid-grade was not as great as high-grade, it would still be of extremely great assistance to him. However, the fruit of nurturing ways was already evolving when he discovered it. Once the evolution process began, it was a path of no return. It was either success or destruction. This was like an expert breaking through a major realm. Once an external force disturbed them during the breakthrough, they would suffer a tremendous backlash and incur unimaginable damage. It might even seal their fates. At this moment, colorful lights suddenly rushed into the air near the medicinal garden in the distance. The surroundings turned into a multicolored, gorgeous world. Within the hazy light circulated the extremely pure power of ways. It was like it was resonating with the 3,000 ways in the surroundings, making them materialize and weave together like chains of order. At the same time, it produced a booming sound of ways. It was wondrous and mysterious. The fruit of nurturing ways has ripened. Seeing the colorful light in the horizon, Jian Chen's face lit up. This moment had finally arrived. Soon afterwards, he immediately abandoned the Dark Star Emperor without the slightest hesitation. He flashed several times, where he teleported with each flicker. He crossed a vast distance with each flash, currently moving at top speed with the laws of space. However, he was still 2 million kilometers away from the medicinal garden. Even if Jian Chen traveled at top speed with the laws of space, it would take him around 15 seconds to cross this distance. Oh no. I can't let the fruit of nurturing ways fall into this person's hands. The Dark Star Emperor's expression changed drastically. He knew it was very difficult for him to reach the fruit of nurturing ways before an expert skilled in the laws of space. With no other choice, all he could do was grit his teeth and steel his resolve. In the next moment, his essence blood began to burn. He had finally made up his mind to injure himself and burn his essence blood to use a special method to awaken the seal's former glory. He formed seals with both hands as a blood-red streak of light spurted out of his mouth, dyeing the fist-sized seal completely red. The seal was a medium-quality god artifact, but it had been heavily damaged in the past. Not only did less than a tenth of its power remain, even its artifact spirit had vanished. When the Dark Star Emperor sprayed out with a mouthful of essence blood and the seals he formed with his hands vanished into the seal seemed to awaken from a slumber. It immediately erupted with light as powerful energy directly tore through space, reducing the surroundings to darkness. At that moment, the seal seemed to return to its former, glorious state when it was in perfect condition after absorbing the Dark Star Emperor's essence blood. It glowed with light unique to a medium-quality god artifact, illuminating the entire world. Medium-quality god artifacts were already god artifacts chaotic primes used. Even some relatively less wealthy grand primes still wielded medium-quality god artifacts. I didn't think I'd actually be forced to take such measures against someone. The Dark Star Emperor sighed gently. Having lost his essence blood, hints of exhaustion appeared on his face. Afterwards, he extended a finger, and the shining seal vanished immediately. No, the seal did not vanish. Instead, it moved through the air with speed that surpassed Jian Chen's, rushing straight towards the medicinal garden. The speed that the seal currently displayed was truly like a living chaotic primes. It crossed tremendous distances with each flash, reaching the utmost limits of speed. Even when Jian Chen traveled at full speed with the laws of space, he was nowhere near as fast as a chaotic prime. He was overtaken instantly. Chaotic primes were figures who had stepped into a higher realm of cultivation after all. These figures underwent a qualitative leap in all aspects after breaking through. In the vast outer space, chaotic primes could even catch up to spaceships when traveling alone. Although the Dark Star Emperor possessed the battle prowess of a chaotic prime, that was only his battle prowess. The Dark Star Emperor possessed none of the various abilities and skills that chaotic primes had grasped. For example, the comprehension of ways. The Dark Star Emperor still remained at the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime, and the strength of his cultivation also remained at the 9th heavenly layer. His speed and vitality was obviously no different. As a result, he was nowhere near as fast as Jian Chen. However, that was a different case with chaotic primes. In merely 10 seconds, the seal overtook Jian Chen and arrived above the medicinal garden first. It turned into a colossal mountain instantly and fell down towards the ground with devastating power, crushing space to the point where it cracked. Jian Chen pushed his laws of space to the limit, hurrying towards the medicinal garden with lightning speed. At the same time, he shot out strands of sword chi that pierced through space, striking the seal extremely quickly in an attempt to delay the seal's fall. However, the seal possessed the might of a medium-quality god artifact after all. Medium-quality god artifacts were still not things Jian Chen could deflect or impact right now, so his sword chi was completely useless. As the seal fell rapidly, the tremendous pressure it gave off made all the plants in the medicinal garden bend downwards. With its speed, it was impossible for Jian Chen to reach the medicinal garden before the seal. At this critical moment, the third strand of profound sword chi appeared near his forehead. Jian Shen had no idea whether the profound sword chi would be effective, but all he could do was try. With the appearance of the profound sword chi, sword intent immediately filled the surroundings. Then, it turned into a streak of light and overcame the bounds of space and time, ignoring the distance between them and striking the seal immediately. The seal immediately trembled violently. Its glow flickered rapidly as it rocked around wildly in the air. The Dark Star Emperor, who was still 2 million kilometers, felt his head ring as if an invisible hammer had struck him. His connection with the seal actually became extremely fragile in that moment, as if it could be severed at any moment. But fortunately, this state only lasted for a single moment before recovering. But within that moment, Jian Shen had already entered the medicinal garden successfully. With a wave of his hand, the fruit of nurturing ways fell into his hands and vanished in the next moment, having been stowed away in his space ring already. Boom! With a great rumble, the world shook. The moment Jian Shen stowed the fruit of nurturing ways away, he plunged into the ground with the seal. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2863, A Pursuit of Great Lengths. Through the connection established with the seal, the Dark Star Emperor could clearly sense that his seal had struck Jian Shen. He had not fled with the laws of space, which finally brought him some relief. Only now did he jerk to his senses and notice that his killing intent towards the outsider had actually become so urgent, rising to a level where he was restless. This was not simply because of the crimes that the outsider had committed by disrupting the great ceremony. The Dark Star Emperor gained a deep understanding over how difficult of an opponent the outsider was and how difficult he was to kill through their battle. He was clearly nowhere near as strong as him, yet he could last such a long time in a battle against him. Apart from that, he also possessed some strange secret techniques. Not only could he destroy his god-tier battle skills, reducing the god-tier battle skills he had spent eons comprehending to nothing, but he also possessed some kind of sword chi that could directly ignore all of his protective measures and appear within his body. Every single technique and method possessed mysterious power. Now that they all gathered on a single person, it directly made the outsider so frightening that even the Dark Star Emperor felt alarmed, giving him a sense of unprecedented threat. Fortunately, he still ended up dying. The Dark Star Emperor exhaled deeply. However, he soon remembered Jian Shen's undying special characteristic and immediately lost confidence. During the battle, there had been several times when Jian Shen sustained unimaginable damage, where even his skull was broken. He had once received several wounds that the Dark Star Emperor believed would surely take his life. Yet, what happened in the end? In the end, he reappeared right in front of him before long. His life force was far too tenacious, basically miraculous. As he thought about that, the Dark Star Emperor, who had let out a sigh of relief, suddenly lost all of his confidence again, while his heart that had settled down leapt into his throat once more. Afterwards, without the slightest hesitation, he turned into a blur and shot off in the direction of the medicinal garden at full speed. By now, the medicinal garden that spanned 100 kilometers across had already become a great, pitch-black, bottomless pit. The Dark Star Emperor had awakened the seal's former might through the price of a droplet of his essence blood, making the seal stretch 100 kilometers across and envelop the entire medicinal garden to launch an indiscriminate attack. Looking at it now, the medicinal garden of the past no longer existed. Not even a trace remained behind in the end. The seal had mercilessly buried it all into the bottomless pit. Very soon, the Dark Star Emperor appeared above the medicinal garden. The destruction of the medicinal garden did not make him feel pained at all. All he cared about was the fate of the outsider. He has already taken the fruit of nurturing ways. If he manages to escape successfully this time and then use the fruit of nurturing ways to increase his strength and oppose our race, the consequences will be unthinkable. I can no longer sense his presence underground. Has he already died? The Dark Star Emperor thought. Right now, he was stern, and his nerves were tense as if he was confronting a powerful enemy. He dared not be careless at all. He had also expanded the senses of his soul as much as possible, carrying out a fine search over the ground below and the depths underground, sweeping past again and again. But at this moment, soil suddenly flung into the air over 100 kilometers away. A figure covered in blood rushed out of the ground, moving extremely quickly and rising to an altitude of 1,000 meters in the blink of an eye. He's actually still alive. The Dark Star Emperor panicked inside. Seeing the presenceless figure that even the senses of his soul could not detect, he immediately began grinding his teeth. With a wave of his hand, the seal that had sunken into the depths of the earth immediately flew out. The Dark Star Emperor could no longer care about his consumption of essence blood. He ignited his essence blood once again to use the secret technique and awaken the past might of the seal. In the next moment, the seal rushed over, arriving above Jian Chen's head instantly while exerting tremendous pressure. But this time, the seal was a step too late. The laws of space pulsed around Jian Chen, and he had already left, making the seal miss. Now, the Dark Star Emperor was unable to sense Jian Chen's presence at all. Unless he used his eyes, he was unable to detect Jian Chen anymore, and this made the Dark Star Emperor panic. His soul sense immediately flooded through the surroundings, grasping at any traces present. At the same time, he rose up to a high altitude and quickly glanced around from above. Finally, he discovered Jian Chen's traces several 100,000 kilometers away with his eyes. He immediately shot off like a bolt of lightning, igniting droplet after droplet of essence blood at the same time and awakening the past might of the seal again and again, launching lightning-fast attacks at Jian Chen from afar. He had no other choice. In terms of speed, it was impossible for him to be faster than Jian Chen, who comprehended the laws of space. Jian Chen had also obtained the fruit of nurturing ways, so he definitely could not let him leave here alive. As a result, the Dark Star Emperor could only use the seal's momentary burst of speed to hunt him down from afar. But now, Jian Chen was the proactive one, and the Dark Star Emperor was the reactive one. Killing him with the seal from so far away was obviously difficult to achieve. Jian Chen frequently changed directions as he advanced, making his movements unpredictable, while the Dark Star Emperor had to find Jian Chen before sending the seal over, which cost him the advantage of acting first. With this delay, Jian Chen basically managed to leave one step earlier every single time when the seal appeared over his head. The Dark Star Emperor's face had paled from anger, tailing behind Jian Chen closely and refusing to give up. He ignited his essence blood again and again, and the seal demonstrated its might as a medium-quality god artifact time and time again. As this went on, even the Dark Star Emperor struggled to cope with it despite his strength. After all, he had already used 6 god-tier battle skills earlier. He had already exhausted his body to a great extent, so the Dark Star Emperor finally began to feel feeble after burning his essence blood and wielding the seal at full strength so many times. But even with that, the Dark Star Emperor had no intentions of giving up. He followed behind, crossing through quite a large part of the Dark Star world through the use of the traces Jian Chen left behind as he fled. Only when they were about to enter the depths of the Two World Mountains did he come to a halt. Outside the Two World Mountains, the Dark Star Emperor's presence rushed into the clouds as his raging anger burned like fire. His eyes stared firmly at the mist-shrouded Two World Mountains, shining with bone-deep hatred. The Two World Mountains were not peaceful either. Sensing the Dark Star Emperor's presence, all of the primordial realm life-devouring beasts produced earth-shaking roars. The ground shook as the mist churned. Powerful primordial realm life-devouring beasts had already emerged from the depths, rushing towards the Dark Star Emperor in resentment. The Dark Star Emperor stood before the Two World Mountains and stared deeply into this special region enshrouded by mist. For the first time since he was born, he experienced a sense of powerlessness deep within his heart. Sigh. In the end, the Dark Star Emperor let out a long sigh. He still ended up stopping before the Two World Mountains without arbitrarily intruding upon the place, as he was unable to sense Jian Chen's presence at all anymore. If he wanted to find him, he could only look for him with his eyes. However, mist surged through the Two World Mountains, obscuring his vision. Not only would it be extremely difficult to look for him, but he would also have to face the attack of so many life-devouring beasts, which was extremely disadvantageous to him. The Dark Star Emperor retreated, returning to the capital city of the Dark Star race once again. The capital city had already been reduced to ruins. There were countless injured people as howls and wails filled the air. More than half of the 10 divine halls that hovered in the air and symbolized authority and status had been destroyed. Only the Dark Star Divine Hall remained in perfect condition. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. The Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters had yet to return from their journey to the Medicinal Garden. Now, apart from the Dark Star Emperor, there was not a single primordial realm expert in the capital city. The Dark Star Emperor stood atop the Divine Hall and gazed down silently at the ruined city, quietly watching his countless clansmen move away the corpses and clean up the battlefield. He said nothing for a very long time. The entire capital city was engulfed in a sorrowful and miserable atmosphere. It had stopped possessing its former, resplendent glory a long time ago. It seemed especially repressive. High in the air, the sacrificial altar had yet to vanish. The virtuous sage of heaven's figure that had clearly become even fainter seemed like it could disperse with merely a gust of wind. He stood on the altar, gazing at the Dark Star Emperor who had already returned. The corner of his lips that were hidden from everyone curled into a victorious smile. "Your Majesty, did you retrieve the divine beast?" The virtuous sage of heaven appeared beside the Dark Star Emperor silently. His voice was stern, clearly anxious. The Dark Star Emperor said nothing. He stared at the city below as if he did not hear the virtuous sage of heaven at all. Only a while later did he begin speaking slowly. His voice was bitter and filled with doubt. "Virtuous sage of heaven, let me ask you, did you really fail to notice Kun Tian had already been replaced by someone else?" The virtuous sage of heaven let out a long sigh and lamented painfully. "It was my mistake. I never thought this person would have a treasure that could mask his presence perfectly. Although treasures like that do exist in the saints' world, basically all of them are god artifacts at the very least. They can't be brought into the Dark Star world. Even in the saints' world, I have never seen or heard of such a wondrous treasure that can be brought into the Dark Star world and offer such a great disguise. By the look of things now, Kun Tian had already been replaced the moment he lost his memories. I didn't think he'd actually manage to remain hidden right under my watch for so long. Sigh, I also have an inescapable responsibility over the failure of the great ceremony this time. I am the greatest offender of the entire race." The virtuous sage of heaven's voice was stern and filled with guilt, together with a deep sense of bitterness. As soon as he heard the virtuous sage of heaven mention the power of the disguise, the Dark Star Emperor could not help but recall all the contact he had with Kun Tian after Kun Tian had lost his memories, as well as the ability that Jian Chen had displayed earlier where he could completely conceal his presence. The Dark Star Emperor immediately became resentful. Before long, the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters who had rushed off towards the Medicinal Garden all returned, gathering in the capital city once again. However, when they saw the horrible state of the capital city, all the primordial realm experts became heavy-hearted. Their faces were stern and gloomy. The 10th Hall Master Feng Shui was senseless. Her face was filled with sorrow, and she was despondent. "I didn't think Kun Tian was actually just an impersonation. In other words, it's extremely likely that our Hall Master was killed by him." A Vice Hall Master of the 8th Divine Hall ground his teeth. No one answered him. The 8th Hall Master's death was suspicious, and he had been in the Two World Mountains with the person who impersonated Kun Tian back then. There was no longer any doubt over how he died. The person who impersonated Kun Tian did indeed possess this strength. Not to mention that the 8th Hall Master had been in the Two World Mountains, so his strength had been suppressed. Meanwhile, the impostor was an outsider, so they were immune to the suppression of the Two World Mountains to a certain degree. A great difference already existed between their strengths in the first place. Coupled with the further suppression, the 8th Hall Master obviously could not escape the clutches of death. "Everyone, listen up. Immediately assemble the citizens of our race. We'll sacrifice our blood and carry out a ritual to gather the will of the entire race and cast the ultimate curse, the Darkstar Emperor ordered resolutely. All of the primordial realm experts were alarmed by that. Your Majesty, do we really have to do this? Your Majesty, we still haven't reached that level of danger yet. The enemy is powerful, but we can still take him on in battle. The Darkstar Emperor glanced past everyone coldly and said frigidly, the fruit of nurturing ways has already fallen into the outsider's hands. Once he breaks through, the consequences will be unfathomable. We have to kill him no matter what before he breaks through. In the Two World Mountains, Jianghu dragged his severely injured body that had already been reduced to ruins through the mountainous forest in a hurry. He erased all of his presence, so his body gave off no energy at all. He seemed like a ghost as he shot through the air silently. Even all the life-devouring beasts scattered in the surroundings failed to discover him. The injuries he had sustained during the battle against the Darkstar Emperor were far too heavy. In particular, when the seal had smashed him into the ground after it had unleashed the might of a medium-quality god artifact, he had sustained almost lethal damage. If it were not for the great vitality and recovery he had been endowed with from the chaotic body, he would have never lasted until now. His current situation could no longer be described as miserable. If a regular person saw him, they would probably cry out in utter fear, "Demon!" Even his head had cracked open, vaguely revealing his glowing soul hidden inside. His entire face was a bloody mess, with absolutely no facial features remaining. Half of his flesh had vanished from the top half of his body, and part of his chest had already been reduced to shreds completely. None of the organs in his body were complete, and even a small part of his left arm had been cut off. He was a ghastly sight to behold. Although he had received such severe damage, Jianghu's life force was still extremely vigorous. Every piece of his flesh, or even every droplet of blood, contained powerful life force. The life force was currently stimulating his chaotic body. As such, his wounds gradually took a turn for the better. Jianghu constantly changed directions, zigzagging about through the depths of the Two World Mountains like a headless fly, but the mask hid his presence, so he was not afraid of life-devouring beasts discovering him. Finally, after covering who knew how much distance in the Two World Mountains, Jianghu stopped and collapsed against a towering tree, heaving for air. However, the moment he made contact with the tree, a rack suddenly opened up in the tree's trunk that stood several hundred meters tall, like an eye had silently opened up. In the next moment, all the branches of the tree suddenly began to dance about, draping down immediately and turning into sharp vines that wrapped around Jianghu as he leaned against the tree. Jianghu was swallowed immediately, having been binded by countless tree branches. He seemed like a great cocoon. The towering tree happened to be a life-devouring beast. Not all the life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains were creatures. Every single flower and blade of grass, every single pebble and grain of sand, had the possibility of developing intelligence and becoming a life-devouring beast. The great tree used its countless branches to envelop Jianghu, clearly using a special method to devour Jianghu's life force. But very soon, the great tree began to tremble. The entire tree swayed about, more and more violently, more and more viciously. As it tried devouring Jianghu, the tree's life force did not increase. Instead, it decreased at a terrifying rate until the entire tree withered and rapidly shrank. It failed to devour Jianghu, having been devoured by Jianghu instead. In a couple of seconds, the sturdy, towering tree had been completely reduced to a piece of dead wood, having lost all of its life force. The life force of a measly god-king life-devouring beast is still too little for me, and the life force hides an imprint that is difficult to remove. Whatever, I'll use it for now to heal. It'll be better than just the self-recovery of the chaotic body at the very least. I can spend some more time to refine away the imprint slowly later on, Jianghu thought before allowing the branches to wrap around him, having lost all of their life force and been reduced to dead wood. He remained there peacefully as he healed slowly. Under his urgings, his recovery rate immediately sped up, but the injuries he had sustained this time were far too heavy. If he wanted to make a complete recovery, it would take him quite some time. Jian Shen was reluctant to spend too much time healing, so he took out various recovery pills from his space ring and wolfed them down like candy. These recovery pills had come from the outsiders. They were not of high quality, but he had plenty of them, so it was better than nothing. Afterwards, he took out many god-tier heavenly resources from his space ring. He no longer cared whether it was a waste or not anymore. After splitting them up based on their type and effects, he began consuming the ones beneficial to recovery. These god-tier heavenly resources had all come from the Dark Star race's medicinal garden. Jian Shen had already harvested the entire garden when the ripening of the fruit of nurturing ways had been accelerated with the temporal crystals. He collected all the heavenly resources that he deemed good enough. There were all sorts and varieties. Now, he happened to have a use for them. With the assistance of these god-tier heavenly resources, Jian Shen's recovery rate immediately sped up by quite a lot. His lost flesh and blood regrew, his organs were reconstructed, and even the small parts severed from his left arm had recovered. Regrowing limbs was nothing difficult even for cultivators with cultivations as low as godhood, let alone Jian Shen who had reached the primordial realm and cultivated the chaotic body. As Jian Shen healed, there was no peace among the Dark Star race. They captured all the outsiders, and the Dark Star race began interrogating every single one of them to collect all the information and news they could get their hands on regarding Jian Shen. The 100 Saints City had also received some special care from the Dark Star race. Everyone had been escorted to the capital city. None of the 52 organizations who remained in the 100 Saints City because of the 5th Divine Hall's protection managed to escape this miserable fate. All of their sacrificial god kings were executed, while their attendants had all been interrogated through torture. The Dark Star race had even used methods akin to soul searching on them. After they had served their use, the Dark Star race would still end up mercilessly executing them. This time, the Dark Star race treated the outsiders with unprecedented cruelty and viciousness. It was not only because Kun Tian's impostor had once protected them, but also because the 100 Saints City had taken part in the operation to disrupt and stop the great ceremony. The artifact spirit of the 100 Saints City used all of the energy in the city and offered up its life to launch an alarming strike that kept the Dark Star Emperor busy, which created an opportunity for Jian Shen, allowing him to easily steal the divine beast they wanted to sacrifice. Otherwise, under the Dark Star Emperor's watch, it would have never been so easy for Jian Shen to escape with Sacred Feather. He might have even failed. As a result, the Dark Star race included the 100 Saints City in their grievances. In particular, the Dark Star Emperor even hated the 100 Saints City as much as Jian Shen. The prodigies in the 100 Saints City all cried out over the injustice, as the artifact spirit's behavior truly had nothing to do with them. It had been completely beyond their control. However, why would the Dark Star race listen to them? Even after they discovered these people had absolutely no idea what had happened through interrogation, they still placed all the blame on their organizations. With the puny strength of these prodigies, it was indeed impossible for them to achieve something like this. However, the 100 Saints City had been personally forged by the peak clans of the Saints world after all. With the exceptional abilities of these peak clans, they seemed to be capable of almost miraculous feats in the eyes of the Dark Star race. As a result, the prodigies of the 100 Saints City truly were unable to offer up a convincing explanation and distance themselves from this incident. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2865, Meeting the Huge Eagle again afterwards, the Dark Star Emperor entered seclusion in the Dark Star Divine Hall. The 10 Divine Halls personally set out to closely interrogate the remaining survivors of the 100 Saints City, collecting everything that they could and finding all possible clues and evidence. The 10th Hall Master Feng Shui even called the 2nd Hall Master Arna to search the land of soul destruction with her. However, under their close interrogation, they failed to lock down on Jian Shen's true identity, but they did find a few potential suspects. These suspects were the young master of the Dire Wolf clan, Jin Hong, the young sect master of the 5 Point sect, the scion of 5 Point, Yang Yutian of the Heavenly Crane clan, and Gu Qi, who had appeared for a brief moment in the Dark Night City, kicking up a great stir before completely vanishing with no traces left behind. In the Dark Star world, the outsiders were primarily gods and over-gods. As for God Kings, it was possible to tally them all up, basically all possessing great origins. After all, cultivators who could reach God King without 1,000 years were dazzling figures even in the Saints' world. The Dark Star race basically had tabs on all figures like that. After eliminating the God Kings the Dark Star race had captured so far, there were not a lot of people remaining. And, among these handful of God Kings, finding the most powerful, most outstanding, and also missing God Kings was obviously a piece of cake. Among the 4 of them, Jin Hong has already left the 100 Saints City, and he possesses the bloodline of the Wolf clan. Moreover, he has appeared at the same time as Kun Tian, so we can basically eliminate him. All that remains now are Gu Qi, Yang Yutian, and the Scion of 5 Point, who are the most suspicious. Gu Qi grasps the laws of strength, and the citizens of Dark Knight City have all asserted that he had broken through on the spot in Dark Knight City, so it's unlikely to be him. The Scion of 5 Point grasps the laws of space and the laws of time. He comes from a large sect in the Saints' world, and he can be clearly traced back to it. However, the person who impersonated Kun Tian also grasped the laws of space, and the laws had already reached the primordial realm. Though, the Scion of 5 Point doesn't seem to have grasped the laws of the sword. As for the last suspect, Yang Yutian, he comprehends the laws of the sword, and he's quite skilled with them. He also dabbles in the laws of space, and his strength is extraordinary. Moreover, his origins are unknown. He claims to be an independent cultivator, and he had once separated from the group in the Two World Mountains before crossing through the entire Two World Mountains alone. His whereabouts are extremely mysterious too. Even when 5 prodigies from the 100 Saints City assembled formations and unleashed power at the primordial realm, they had failed to kill him. In the end, he killed the 5 prodigies before going missing for some reason. After a delicate investigation where they spared no detail, the 10 divine halls finally found something. Even though they knew finding the true identity of Kun Tian's impostor would be of no practical use, they felt extremely humiliated as soon as they remembered how the impostor had once utterly fooled them. He had even tricked them out of many stalks of high-grade God King grass and other precious items like ancestral sacred earth. If they could not even find the true identity of Kun Tian's impostor, then the Dark Star race would come off as simply too useless. As a result, the upper echelon of the Dark Star race had already sworn they would get to the bottom of the impostor's true identity. This independent cultivator by the name of Yang Yutian once crossed through the Two World Mountains alone. He spent an extremely lengthy time in the Two World Mountains, and he mysteriously vanished soon after he appeared, potentially entering the Two World Mountains again. And, he had entered the Two World Mountains to complete Kun Tian's request, which was to hunt down large numbers of God King life-devouring beasts. For a moment, basically all 10 divine halls placed great focus on the name of Yang Yutian. Kun Tian's impostor once entered the Two World Mountains under Kun Tian's identity. Sun Ran had also died then. The coincidence is when Yang Yutian appeared in the 100 Saints City, Kun Tian just happened to be in the Two World Mountains. Afterwards, when Yang Yutian killed the prodigies of the 5 organist ions and vanished, Kun Tian happened to be found. Basically only Kun Tian or Yang Yutian appear at one time, but not both. When one appears, the other vanishes. When one vanishes, the other appears. This is far too great of a coincidence. The 10 divine halls began to develop a sense of suspicion before carrying out a full-blown collection of everything related to Yang Yutian. The prodigies of the 100 Saints City had also been interrogated countless times. In the end, they linked together all the clues, allowing the 10 divine halls to finally confirm Kun Tian's true identity. All of these events pointed to the fact that Kun Tian's impostor was Yang Yutian. Yang Yutian, I'm going to kill you. And the Heavenly Crane clan, I'll never spare you. Feng Shui lost control. Killing intent surged from her body as she exclaimed in a shrill manner. Her heart had already become embedded with bone-deep hatred. What? The 5th Hall Master Kun Tian had always been impersonated by Yang Yutian? When the surviving prodigies of the 52 organizations learned about this conclusion, they were all dumbfounded. They were clueless. In the depths of the two-world mountains, the thick, white mist shrouded everything, covering almost half of the dark star world. Within the thick, white mist, there was a huge eagle whose feathers shone with golden light. It stood over 300 meters tall. Currently, it soared through the air with its wings unfurled, gazing down and scanning around, like a lord touring and surveilling his territory. This great, golden eagle happened to be a life-devouring beast. Its eyes shone with a certain light, which proved it already possessed a certain level of intelligence. The presence it gave off had already reached the primordial realm. The shrouding mist could obscure the vision of all cultivators, but it seemed transparent in the eyes of the huge eagle. Its gaze passed through the mist with ease, clearly seeing extremely far away. At this moment, in a lush bush below, a certain region caught the huge eagle's attention, as a dead tree actually appeared among the verdant vegetation. The tree was a dark gray. In a sea of vegetation that stretched as far as the eye could see, it seemed especially jarring. It was difficult not to see it. The golden eagle flapped its huge wings violently and immediately changed directions, flying over with great gusts of wind. At the same time, underneath the dead tree, Jianghu, who was wrapped up in layers of withered branches, snapped open his eyes. His gaze seemed to pass through the numerous branches and the thick mist, seeing the huge, golden eagle that rapidly flew towards him in the distant sky. A primordial realm life-devouring beast? Jianghu took note of it and immediately sensed the life-devouring beast's strength. Afterwards, he shuddered gently, and the branches around him immediately broke away. I've erased my presence, so it's impossible for the life-devouring beast to discover me. The dead tree behind me has probably caught its attention. Jianghu stood up. Even though he could easily kill a measly first heavenly layer infinite prime life-devouring beast, he only wanted to find a safe place to recover and then ingest the fruit of nurturing ways to break through. He had no interest in any unnecessary trouble. Right when he was about to leave, his expression suddenly changed, and a smear of surprise appeared in his eyes. He contemplated quickly before giving up on the thought of leaving. His presence changed and so did his appearance, now resembling Yang Yutian. At this moment, tremendous air pressure descended from above. Within the churning mist, a massive creature landed on the ground. A pair of hooked talons shining with a metallic luster dug into the soil. The huge, golden eagle had already landed before Jianghu. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2866. Giving back. The huge eagle landed on the ground and discovered Jianghu standing before the dead tree at first glance. Its gaze from its huge, eagle eyes landed on Jianghu naturally, staring straight at him. Jianghu hovered in the air, reaching the same level as the huge eagle. He stared at the eagle with a hint of surprise as he smiled faintly. I didn't think I'd see you again, and you'd make a breakthrough and reach the primordial realm. I don't know if you still remember me. Gazing at the golden eagle, Jianghu could not help but think about the god-king life-devouring beast he had once tamed to serve as his mount. They had met after he separated from the group when he first set foot in the two-world mountains. That god-king life-devouring beast was the huge, golden eagle right before him. Now that they met again, the huge eagle had already stepped into the primordial realm, which left Jianghu amazed. The huge eagle did not disappoint Jianghu. It recognized the human expert that had helped it in the past very soon. If it were not for the brains of the primordial realm life-devouring beast Jianghu had bestowed upon it, it definitely could not have reached the primordial realm so soon. In the next moment, the huge eagle let out a long cry, filled with joy. Its head that was several times larger than Jianghu approached him slowly, nudging against him softly. Jianghu revealed a rare smile. He used his hand to stroke the eagle's head. The golden feathers gave off a metallic feeling. They were extremely tough. I didn't think you'd still remember me. The huge eagle let out a clear cry as if it was communicating using its own language. Then, it abruptly turned around with its colossal body and immediately appeared below Jianghu's feet. Afterwards, without Jian Chen's approval, it flapped its wings, and a powerful pressure filled the surroundings. It soared off into the sky with Jian Chen on its back. The huge eagle soared happily through the mist-shrouded skies. It scanned the mountainous landscape below proudly in a surveilling manner. It let out clear cries again and again as if it was introducing its territory to Jian Chen through a language he could not understand. Along the way, it unleashed its primordial realm pressure. Wherever it passed by, all the life-devouring beasts trembled on the ground as if they were performing the most noble gesture towards their king. Jian Chen sat on the eagle's wide back and smiled faintly. He had tamed the huge eagle as his mount on a whim in the past. Afterwards, when he killed the primordial realm life-devouring beast and gave the eagle its brains, he had not thought too much about it. However, he never thought his actions of the past would create a regional king in the two world mountains in such a short time. In the end, the huge eagle brought Jian Chen back to its nest. It was an extremely large tree crown, and the tree was also a life-devouring beast. It had already reached peak God King. The huge eagle landed on the tree crown naturally. Soon afterwards, countless branches of the tree danced around. Each branch ensnared several weaker life-devouring beasts, which were all delivered to the eagle's mouth. These were all the huge eagle's food. The huge eagle opened its mouth and sucked in all of the food, showing satisfaction. Afterwards, it seemed to remember something and removed the cover over a certain corner of its nest with its beak, revealing a small puddle of green liquid that radiated with dense life force. It used its head to push Jian Chen on the back towards the puddle of green liquid. Jian Chen obviously recognized the green liquid. It was water of life condensed from extremely dense life force. It had miraculous effects whether it was for healing or alchemy, and it was something that all outsiders gathered. Water of life was a special product of the Dark Star world, but it would only appear in the Two World Mountains, a region where the Dark Star race had no control over. As he gazed at the puddle of water of life and analyzed the huge eagle's actions, Jian Chen understood its intentions very quickly. He could not help but smile and gesture about. "You want to give me the water of life?" The eagle did not seem to understand Jian Chen's words, but it did understand Jian Chen's gestures, so it nodded immediately. "All right, then I'll accept the water of life." Jian Chen did not hold back. He immediately took out a jade bottle and stored the water of life away. There was not a lot of water of life, only around 1 to 1.5 liters, but it could fetch an impressive price. The presence of life is too dense. It'll probably be very difficult to find such high-quality water of life in the Saints' world. Probably only the Two World Mountains the grand exalt of the wood spirits created can produce such high-quality water of life, Jian Chen thought. He understood exactly how rare and precious this water of life would be in the Saints' world. In the Saints' world, water of life was rare but not impossible to find. As a matter of fact, some experts who grasped the corresponding laws could produce the water of life with their powers. However, rarely would it reach the same quality as what was found in the Two World Mountains. Afterwards, Jian Chen sent the senses of his soul into the divine hall he carried on him to inspect Sacred Feather's wounds. He frowned very soon. Sacred Feather currently laid in the divine hall, unconscious. Jian Chen could clearly sense the powers of two completely different bloodlines clashing and waging war against one another. One of the bloodlines came from the grand exalt of the Dark Star race's essence blood. Right now, the power of the Dark Star race's bloodline from the droplet of essence blood was especially powerful, virtually claiming 99% of Sacred Feather. As for the other bloodline, it belonged to Sacred Feather, which should be the bloodline of the winged tiger god. However, compared to the bloodline of the Dark Star race, the bloodline of the winged tiger god was much weaker. It seemed like a skiff in the raging ocean before the bloodline of the Dark Star race, insignificant and in great danger. However, while this bloodline that belonged to Sacred Feather was very weak, it demonstrated unimaginable tenacity. Under the powerful suppression and assimilation of the Dark Star race's bloodline, it was like a candle in the wind, about to extinguish at any time, but it continued to hold on. This makes no sense. Back then when the Dark Star race held the great ceremony, the power of Sacred Feather's bloodline had already assimilated away completely. I could sense it very clearly when I saved Sacred Feather. The power of his original bloodline shouldn't exist. Jian Chen was taken aback. He immediately began to study Sacred Feather closely, discovering very soon in surprise that Sacred Feather's flesh, blood, organs, tendons, bones, and even skin, in short, every part of him, seemed to have mysterious vital energy surging out from the hidden, deepest depths. It gathered together strand by strand, sliver by sliver, before forming that weak power of bloodline in Sacred Feather's body. This was the power that belonged to Sacred Feather's original bloodline. A droplet of essence blood from the Grand Exalt of the Darkstar race actually can't completely erase Sacred Feather's bloodline? Jian Chen was deeply surprised, but even with his discovery, he was helpless over Sacred Feather's current situation. Afterwards, Jian Chen inspected Sacred Feather's soul, only to find that it was a mess. Jian Chen was not particularly accomplished with souls either, so he was unable to determine the exact situation immediately. Looks like all I can do is ask some chaotic primes or even grand primes to take a look once I get out. There was nothing Jian Chen could do. Even though he had already saved Sacred Feather, he was powerless over Sacred Feather's current situation. After all, this touched on the bloodline of Grand Exalts. It required far too high of a level of understanding. It was not something an infinite prime like him could meddle with yet. Afterwards, Jian Chen began to consider the upcoming problems. Most of his wounds had already healed. Although he had not made a full recovery yet, he was close. Right now, he needed to consider finding a place to break through. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2867, Consuming the Fruit of Nurturing Ways. Not only would he be breaking through with the way of the sword this time, he was breaking through with the chaotic body as well. If he broke through consecutively, even he had no idea whether he would make a great disturbance or not, so he had to find a place of absolute safety. The territory of the Darkstar race was definitely off limits. He could be discovered at any time. If he managed to draw over the Darkstar Emperor when he was at a critical juncture, the consequences would be unthinkable. On the other hand, the Two World Mountains seemed like a good choice. The Darkstar race was not bold enough to set foot in here. In particular, the territory under the control of the huge, Golden Eagle could even deter many life-devouring beasts from disturbing him. However, he was also worried that if his breakthrough caused too great of a disturbance, it would attract all the primordial realm life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains. The huge eagle was also at the primordial realm, but it had only just broken through to the first heavenly layer of Infinite Prime. It could not stop the other primordial realm life-devouring beasts. No matter how I think about it, the safest place is the entrance to the passageway connecting the Spirit's world and the Darkstar world, as that is located in the depths of the Two World Mountains, and it's enveloped in a powerful barrier, where no life-devouring beast can pass through. Even members of the Darkstar race won't be able to reach there. That place is a special zone that only outsiders can set foot in, Jian Chen thought. However, the only issue was that he did not know where the entrance was located. After all, the Two World Mountains were far too big, almost the same size as the territory under the Darkstar race's control. And the terrain here constantly changed. If he traveled in a straight line, he would discover in the end that he had been walking in circles. As a result, if he did not have an accurate, fixed location, it went without saying how difficult it would be to find the direction of the entrance in such a large region. In the Two World Mountains, Jian Chen was not afraid of being unable to find the Darkstar world. After all, he had stayed in the Darkstar world for such a long time. He had left behind more than one marker in various places long ago. He only had to sense the location of the markers, and he could make his way out very easily. However, he had not left behind any location markers at the entrance to the passageway between the two worlds, as he was uncertain about the situation when he first arrived in this place. When Jian Chen unconsciously glanced past the huge eagle, his eyes immediately lit up. Not only was the huge eagle a life-devouring beast that had been born and raised in the Two-World Mountains, it had also reached the primordial realm and become one of the many regional kings of the Two-World Mountains. It even possessed its own territory, so Jianghu wondered if it knew the direction to the entrance. He took action as soon as he thought of it. Jianghu immediately began communicating with the huge eagle, but due to the fact that the huge eagle was a life-devouring beast, it was not particularly clever despite possessing some intelligence. There was great trouble in communicating with it. In the end, Jianghu tried various methods and used tremendous effort before finally getting the huge eagle to understand what he was saying. The huge eagle raised his head as if it was in thought before suddenly producing a clear cry a while later, telling Jianghu to climb onto its back. It immediately took off with Jianghu. With a powerful pressure, its colossal figure vanished into the thick mist instantly. The huge eagle soared through the thick mist, moving extremely quickly. It constantly changed directions, avoiding the territories of other primordial realm life-devouring beasts and rapidly approaching the central region of the Two-World Mountains. In the end, after who knew how many kilometers, the huge eagle stopped in a region with thinner mist. It stared ahead with evident fear in its gaze, afraid to advance any further. I didn't think it would find this place so quickly. Looks like I hadn't given the brains of the primordial realm life-devouring beast away for nothing. Jianghu eased up. The sense of his soul surged out, having sensed the existence of the barrier 100 kilometers away already. Within the barrier was the passageway between the two worlds. Jianghu leapt off the huge eagle's back. After bidding farewell to the eagle, he crossed the distance in a single step and appeared before the barrier instantly. The barrier blocked all life-devouring beasts and the mist, but it was useless against outsiders. Jianghu passed through the barrier and noticed the huge swirl of energy hanging in the air 100 kilometers away at first glance. That was the passageway between the two worlds. Only by passing through the vortex of energy would he directly reach the spirit's world. Only outsiders can set foot in here, but the outsiders who enter this world are only at God King at most, so choosing to break through here is the safest, Jianghu thought. He did not approach the barrier, instead finding an extremely remote place near the edge of the barrier and casting down a spatial barrier. The spatial barrier had a certain level of defense, and it could block off the senses of the soul below the primordial realm. Of course, its greatest use was refracting light, so it could fool the naked eye. The moment the spatial barrier was created, Jianghu immediately vanished. The light near the region where he stood had already been refracted. With that, if any outsiders passed through the passageway, they would not be able to see Jianghu with their naked eyes. The spatial barrier could block off the senses of the soul. Although it was useless against primordial realm experts, it was more than enough for God Kings. The barrier that enveloped this entire region could block off the senses of the soul, and Jianghu was located near the barrier. Just like that, even if the spatial barrier blocked a God King's senses, they would mistake it to be the barrier around the region. Jianghu sat down in the spatial barrier, continuing with his healing. Before he consumed the fruit of nurturing ways, he had to ensure he was at his peak condition so that he would be on the safe side of things. Several days later, Jianghu slowly opened his eyes. His wounds had already recovered completely, and even the power of the soul consumed from using the profound sword qi had been completely replenished through ingesting some god-tier heavenly resources from the Darkstar race. It's time for me to begin my breakthrough. Jianghu took in a deep breath, and with a flip of his hand, the high-grade god-tier fruit of nurturing ways appeared. The moment it appeared, the laws and ways immediately manifested, coiling around the fruit. In that moment, Jianghu immediately felt like he had spent most of his time hiding away in the very depths of a certain mist. The order of ways that was very difficult to grasp immediately became much clearer, allowing people to see through them easier. With the fruit of nurturing ways in hand, even if he did not directly consume it, merely cultivating with it by his side would make it easier to comprehend the laws and ways. As he gazed at the fruit of nurturing ways, Jianghu could not help but become rather excited before wolfing down the entire thing in a few bites. The moment the fruit of nurturing ways reached his belly, it turned into an extremely dense presence of ways and pervaded. Jianghu immediately felt like he resided in a sea of laws, where the endless power of laws wrapped around him and completely submerged him. Residing in the sea of laws, the profound ways that he normally struggled to see clearly, struggled to comprehend, and struggled to understand immediately became extremely clear. As he comprehended them, achieving twice the results with half the effort could no longer describe his current speed. Normally, the areas that obstructed Jian Chen's advance, that Jian Chen was unable to understand thoroughly, only required a slight comprehension now. With that, he would immediately feel like he had achieved enlightenment, rigorously understanding every part of them. Right now, without any exaggeration, Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of the sword increased evidently with each passing second. The distance between breaking through the minor achievement of Sword Immortal and reaching the partial achievement of Sword Immortal was becoming shorter and shorter. He could basically touch the invisible membrane between the realms already. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2868, Breakthrough. During the time Jian Chen spent breaking through in the Two World Mountains, it had not been peaceful among the Dark Star race. After learning the fate-changing Great Ceremony had ended in failure due to the interruption of the outsiders, all members of the Dark Star race became furious. Chants like, "Kill all outsiders," or "All outsiders deserve to die," could be heard everywhere in the Dark Star race. Due to the Great Ceremony, the hatred and boycotting of the outsiders from the Dark Star race had reached an unprecedented level. Even some members of the Dark Star race who were originally accepting and tolerant of the outsiders began to hate the outsiders. The 36 major cities as well as the countless towns and villages scattered through the wilderness were all enveloped in a murderous aura. Outsiders, return our divine beast. The divine beast was a sacrifice from our race to our ancestor. What gives you the right to take the divine beast from us? The divine beast belongs to our ancestor. The outsiders are a group of shameless thieves. They've stolen our divine beast and obstructed our great ceremony. None of the outsiders can be forgiven. Outsiders, return the divine beast immediately. This was the fury of the entire race, as well as the hatred of the entire race. But very soon, a point of release appeared for their hatred. An ancient technique flowed out from the capital city, spreading the 36 major cities and the countless towns and villages scattered everywhere at the same time. This was the ultimate curse that had been passed down from the predecessors of the Dark Star race. A part of the technique had spread through the entire Dark Star race. The Dark Star Emperor had already passed his orders, about to condense the will of the entire race and unleash the ultimate curse. As a result, the entire Dark Star race got to work. Endless amounts of blood was transported by the 36 major cities, allocated to all the towns and villages in their surroundings. In that moment, as the surging hatred condensed, the behavior of the countless members of the Dark Star race had never been so united. Everyone stopped everything they were doing and began using blood as ink, painting glyphs onto their walls at home, the streets and alleyways outside and the walls of every city. These glyphs were a part of the ultimate curse. And the blood used to paint these glyphs all came from the outsiders. Immediately, a heavy smell of blood filled the 36 major cities as well as the numerous towns and villages. In particular, a faceless statue was erected in the 36 major cities. The Dark Star race was using the power of the entire race to cast the ultimate curse, so they clearly had to carry out a series of preparations and arrangements. They placed great emphasis to the details, and some arrangements could not be completed immediately. Similar things unfolded in the capital city. All members of the Dark Star race in the capital city split into two groups. One group was responsible for the repair of the capital city following the battle, while the other used the blood of the outsiders to cover the streets and alleyways and even walls of the entire capital city with similar glyphs. A faceless statue was also erected in the capital city. Above the capital city, the 10 divine halls had already returned to their positions, but learning from the previous lesson, these 10 divine halls had all been switched out already. They were all medium-quality god artifacts now. The Dark Star race had once been a glorious race that birthed a grand exalt after all. They had produced countless experts, so there was nothing strange about being able to produce 10 medium-quality god artifacts. But without any exceptions, all of the medium-quality god artifacts were damaged. Some of them had already undergone some simple repair, while cracks were even visible on the remaining divine halls. These divine halls had all lost their former glory, but even with that being the case, the toughness of the material that medium-quality god artifacts were made from could not be compared to low-quality god artifacts. Your Majesty, the inscriptions have already been completed in the capital city and the 36 major cities. However, we've come up with numerous ideas, but we can't find a medium for the ultimate curse to descend upon the outsider. If we can't lock onto the outsider accurately, then the ultimate curse we cast will have no target. In the Darkstar Divine Hall, the Darkstar Emperor sat on his throne calmly as the 7th Hall Master Gedi reported politely below. The Darkstar Emperor took out a jade bottle from his space ring in no hurry with that. The moment the bottle appeared, it became wrapped in an invisible power and slowly drifted before Gedi. At the same time, the Darkstar Emperor's deep voice rang out, "There's some of the outsider's flesh and blood in there. Divide the flesh and blood into 37 portions and allocate them to the capital city and the 36 major cities. They will serve as the medium of the curse." Jian Shen, who was breaking through at the entrance of the Two World Mountains, had absolutely no idea that the lethal strike where the Darkstar race had rallied all of their clansmen to arrange was already drawing closer. Right now, he had already entered the most important juncture with his breakthrough of the Way of the Sword. The laws of the sword had already manifested around him, condensing into strand upon strand of sword chi that revolved around him, like little spirits flying around Jian Shen, and radiating with a heavy immortal bearing. Jian Shen's clothes and hair ruffled despite the absence of wind, making him seem like he was ascending from mortality. This was the bearing of Sword Immortal. Jian Shen had already reached this realm. Not only did his entire bearing give off a transcendent feeling, even the sword chi that had condensed out of thin air because of him bore a heavy bearing of immortality. At that moment, Jian Shen's presence suddenly swelled drastically. It was also at that moment when the sword chi around him suddenly glowed brilliantly. All of the sword chi seemed to grow together in that moment, becoming even stronger and even more dazzling. It was as if Jian Shen's sword chi had leapt up qualitatively in that moment, reaching a new level. His Way of the Sword had formally broken through, stepping through the minor achievement of Sword Immortal and becoming an expert at the partial achievement of Sword Immortal, which could also be understood as Mid-Sword Immortal. With the breakthrough of the laws of the sword, Jian Shen immediately felt like a brand new door had opened up to him. In the door, he could see an even vaster world of the Way of the Sword, as if he had entered an entirely different universe. That was not all. With his breakthrough of the Way of the Sword, his soul had benefited too, rapidly strengthening and growing at an unbelievable rate. It was unstoppable, tearing through realms one after another, before stopping at the 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime in the end. Although it was the 9th heavenly layer, Jian Shen's soul was different after all. It had once fused with a strand of true chaotic force, so his soul had changed long ago. In terms of strength, it had long surpassed those at the same cultivation realm as him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2869, Swelling in Strength. The breakthrough with the laws of the sword and the strengthening of the powers of the soul only seemed to be a start for Jian Shen. In the next moment, mysterious power seemed to gush out from nothingness inside Jian Shen's body, rapidly merging Jian Shen's soul with the comprehension of the ways that belong to the laws of space. Is this the power of the spatial insect emperor's beast soul? The appearance of the power immediately made Jian Shen's mind shudder, becoming filled with undisguisable joy. Back then on the Delight Plane, he had successfully refined the beast soul of the spatial insect emperor under the assistance of the greatest expert of the Delight Plane, the Rain Abbess, perfectly inheriting the spatial insect emperor's control over space. However, the spatial insect emperor was a terrifying existence on par with grand primes after all. With Jian Shen's strength back then, although he managed to refine the spatial insect emperor's beast soul in the very end with the rain abyss assistance, he could only merge with a very small fraction of the beast soul's power. The remaining power could not be absorbed because his soul was far too weak. In the end, that portion was hidden away in the depths of his body. Now, with the strengthening of the powers of his soul, the powers of the beast soul lurking in Jianghu finally re-emerged, beginning to merge with his soul, allowing him to absorb it effortlessly. Immediately, Jianghu could sense his comprehension of the laws of space skyrocket. His grasp over the laws of space was becoming stronger and stronger. The increase in his laws of space was completely different from the laws of the sword. For his laws of the sword to increase, he had to comprehend it bit by bit, even with the fruit of nurturing ways assistance. The true effect of the fruit of nurturing ways was akin to clearing away the enshrouding mist and allowing the cultivator to see the ways of the world more directly and clearly. Whether they could successfully break through in the end would still depend on their fortunes and ability to comprehend. That was why ingesting the fruit of nurturing ways only gave around an 80% chance at breaking through and not 100%. If his ability to comprehend were insufficient, then it was still possible to fail the breakthrough even if he ingested the fruit of nurturing ways at the limit of his current realm of cultivation. However, absorbing the power of the beast's soul was completely different. The power of the beast's soul was the extremely pure power of laws. It was the ways of the world, so there was no need to purposefully comprehend them at all. Every bit he absorbed would mean his comprehension of the laws of space would increase by that amount. This method of comprehension had completely overturned logic and surpassed the limits of laws. It could not be replicated. In the history of the various worlds, there was probably only Jianghu who could achieve this with his special soul that had merged with a sliver of true chaotic force. The powers of the beast soul flowed out endlessly, and Jianghu did not reject them either. He accepted it all mindlessly. Immediately, his mastery over the laws of space began to increase rapidly. It went from the original second heavenly layer to the third heavenly layer in mere a few seconds, followed by the fourth heavenly layer, fifth heavenly layer, sixth heavenly layer. Finally, after who knew how long, his soul became full once again after reaching the eighth heavenly layer with the laws of space. He was unable to merge with even another fraction of the powers of the beast soul anymore. After such a drastic increase, the powers of the beast soul still did not run out. However, the remaining powers hid away in the depths of his body once again as if it was waiting for Jianghu's next breakthrough. Jianghu slowly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately felt the world, no, more accurately, the space, the surroundings, had become different through his eyes. In a daze, he seemed to vaguely make out the structure of space. The space, or even the entire world, had become even clearer and more transparent in his eyes. Additionally, he could also sense that the connection between his body, his soul, and space had become even closer. The laws of space have reached the eighth heavenly layer. The next increase will be when I reach the major achievement of Sword Immortal. The power of the beast soul is very vast. It might not be able to elevate my laws of space to the same level as the spatial insect emperor of the past, but I'll be able to reach chaotic prime at the very least. As for what comes afterwards, I'll have to slowly comprehend it myself. The laws of the sword have reached the partial achievement of Sword Immortal. According to the divisions of the saint's world, it should be around the eighth heavenly layer of infinite prime. Of course, I've only reached the partial achievement of Sword Immortal right now. When I reach the peak of the partial achievement of Sword Immortal, it should be equivalent to the ninth heavenly layer of infinite prime. Jianghu silently sensed his strength and was immediately filled with satisfaction. He had already become far, far stronger than before he had broken through. When I reach the major achievement of Sword Immortal, it will be chaotic prime. The strengthening in terms of laws has already been completed. What comes next is the chaotic body. Jianghu sucked in a deep breath and calmed down his surging emotions before taking out a great pile of God-tier heavenly resources from his space ring and splitting them into different categories. If I want to break through with the chaotic body, I need to absorb energy. The energy does not seem to be a lot, but if I use the strength and level of the chaotic force as a yardstick, I'll need to spend thousands of years absorbing origin energy. Divine crystals are already nowhere near enough to make up for the gap. However, fortunately, there were many god-tier heavenly resources that can increase cultivation in the medicinal garden of the Dark Star race. It has saved me quite a lot of effort. Afterwards, Jian Shen began adjusting his condition and found the ancient imprint in his body. The imprint had been left behind when he devoured the life force of a god-king life-devouring beast in the Two World Mountains back then. Jian Shen examined the imprint in his body carefully and gradually frowned, as the imprint gave him a bad feeling. He immediately understood that the existence of the imprint was anything but good. He could not help but think of the strange mist in the Two World Mountains, as well as the deranged state of the outsiders from absorbing too much of the mist. The Two World Mountains is not a safe place. Even I cannot see through the mysteries it's hiding, so there is even less reason for me to casually devour the life force of life-devouring beasts. Looks like I need to be a little more cautious when I move around in the Two World Mountains in the future, Jian Shen thought, before immediately refining away the imprint in his body. The imprint was difficult to refine away, but it did only come from a god-king life-devouring beast after all, so it could not stump Jian Shen. It would only take him a little more effort. Before long, the imprint had been completely eliminated. Afterwards, Jian Shen began ingesting god-tier heavenly resources, preparing to make a breakthrough with the chaotic body. If these heavenly resources were refined into pills, then not only would their violent and brutal nature mellow out, making them easier to absorb, but their effects would be elevated to a whole different level. However, Jian Shen clearly had not grasped alchemy, so he would be dreaming if he wanted to refine god-tier pills. As a result, he could only use the most primitive method available and directly ingest the god-tier heavenly resources. This method of ingestion obviously came with certain side effects, as many god-tier heavenly resources had extremely brutal and violent medicinal effects. The slightest carelessness could lead to more bad than good. However, Jian Shen possessed the chaotic body, so he could completely neglect all side effects. No matter how brutal and violent the medicinal effects were, he could completely overwhelm and forcefully refine it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2870. The ultimate curse. Jian Shen had already experienced the breakthrough of the chaotic body over a dozen times in the past, so it was a piece of cake. Accumulating energy through ingesting god-tier heavenly resources, he shattered his Niden once again and went through another round of torture before finally condensing a chaotic Niden that belonged to the 15th layer of the chaotic body. With the breakthrough of the chaotic body, his strength increased qualitatively once again. Not only did his chaotic force become even stronger, but even his chaotic body evolved in all respects. His body had become even tougher, and the defenses of the chaotic body had reached an extremely startling level. The only downside to all of this was that the chaotic Niden in his dantian had shrunken to a fraction of its past size. Before the breakthrough, his chaotic Niden had already accumulated virtually inexhaustible chaotic force. Even if he fought at his full strength, it would take an extremely long time for it to run out. Now that he had broken through, the tremendous chaotic force had been concentrated, reduced to a scant amount. It could not last several battles. My grievances with the Dark Star race are still unfinished, and I still have to engage in a violent clash with the Dark Star Emperor later. I need to replenish as much chaotic force as possible, Jian Shen thought. He had to be well prepared. Although he had already successfully broken through, he did not stop cultivating. Instead, he continued to ingest the remaining god-tier heavenly resources to replenish his chaotic force. However, the chaotic force had broken through to the 15th layer. Due to the increase in quality, it took Jian Shen much more energy to replenish each strand of chaotic force compared to before. The replenishment of his chaotic force became even more difficult. Several days later, Jian Shen had consumed all the god-tier heavenly resources he had obtained from the Dark Star race's medicinal garden as long as they could strengthen his cultivation. Despite ingesting so many god-tier heavenly resources, the chaotic Niden in his dantian did not strengthen by too much. Having run out of cultivation resources, Jian Shen was forced to stop cultivating. He finally opened his tightly shut eyes slowly. The moment he opened his eyes, 2 streaks of sword chi shot out of his eyes. They were almost tangible, extremely resplendent and blinding. The entire world became brighter with the appearance of the 2 strands of sword chi. Right now, it seemed like Jian Chen's gaze was extremely sharp, radiating with vigor as if they were hiding surging sword chi. If weaker cultivators made eye contact with him, they would feel like their eyes had been stabbed by swords, causing them extreme agony. However, his sharp gaze did not last for too long. Very soon, his gaze returned to normal with Jian Chen's intentional concealment. He silently sensed his strength after breaking through and could not help but become drastically more confident. After breaking through to the 15th layer, the chaotic force is roughly equivalent to the energy of 8th heavenly layer infinite primes. As for the chaotic body, with the current toughness of my chaotic body, attacks below the 8th heavenly layer shouldn't be able to penetrate my defenses. Only attacks at the 8th heavenly layer or above can injure me. Apart from the Dark Star Emperor, there are no other experts who are at the 8th heavenly layer or higher in the current Dark Star race. Even the publicly recognized greatest expert among the 10 divine halls, the first hall master, is only a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime. However, the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race all possess greater battle prowess than those from the Saints' world. The first hall master might be able to breach the defenses of my chaotic body barely, but it'll be a few small scratches at most. Jian Chen smiled in satisfaction. He knew that right now, there was not a single existence that could threaten him anymore, whether it was from the 2 world mountains or the Dark Star race. Before he knew it, he had already become the greatest expert of this world. Although he had already made it to the apex, Jian Chen dared not get ahead of himself, not even by a little, as he understood very well how complicated this miniature world was. After all, this was a special place 2 grand exalts created. Even the many grand primes of the Saints' world, the supreme experts who stood at the apex of an entire world, could do nothing to the Dark Star world. As a result, he could not underestimate the Dark Star world. It's time to find the Dark Star Emperor. Jian Chen stood up, but at this moment, he suddenly frowned. His peaceful heart began to thump violently without any good reason. An ominous feeling assaulted Jian Chen's heart, which made him feel like he was facing imminent disaster. It was as if a great danger was currently pressing closer silently. It's the Dark Star race. His strength had broken through. As a late infinite prime, just how sharp were Jian Chen's senses? With his comprehension of the ways of the world at an even deeper level, he only needed to think about it slightly, and he would get a vague sense of things. After all, only the Dark Star Emperor's cultivation realm was slightly higher than his in the Dark Star world. He might not have been able to sense and uncover those stronger than him, but he could sense it very easily if someone far weaker than him targeted him. The disaster arrived extremely quickly. The moment Jian Chen sensed it, he discovered an invisible, mysterious power shoot through the air, descending above him instantly. Immediately, Jian Chen felt his chest grow heavy, and his heartbeat came to a standstill. The flow of his chaotic force and blood was affected as well, slowing down. This was not even the most terrifying part. What shocked Jian Chen the most was that he could already clearly sense his body gradually disappearing, starting from his feet. The flesh, tendons, bone, and skin on his feet melted away at a visible rate, constantly destroyed before being reduced to nothingness in the end. There was no pain, nor was there any sensation. The nervous system connected to the vanished flesh and blood seemed like it had already been severed. This was a mysterious power Jian Chen had never seen before. He could already predict that if he did not take action and try to save himself, his entire being would completely vanish from the world eventually, which was equivalent to death. This is a curse. The Dark Star race has actually unleashed such a terrifying curse. Don't tell me it's really like what the Dark Star Emperor has said, and they've used the entire race's power to activate the ultimate curse their ancestor left behind? Jian Chen's gaze shone in an extremely shocking manner. He circulated the chaotic force in him as hard as possible, opposing the power of the curse with his full strength. The curse was far too powerful, and it touched on a level simply too high, well beyond Jian Chen's scope of understanding. As a result, even when he opposed the curse with his full strength, he was unable to stop the power from mercilessly erasing his existence. He could only buy some time at most. At that moment, Jian Chen's figure vanished. He had already left the area. He seemed to have fused with space completely, flying through the two-world mountains swiftly. He had already pushed the laws of space, which had just broken through to the 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime, to the limit. He was currently crossing through the two-world mountains as quickly as he could to reach the Dark Star world. He refused to even waste a moment. With each moment he wasted, the damage he would receive would become even greater and even more parts of him would be completely destroyed. Before such a powerful curse, the recovery rate of his chaotic body that he took pride in was not much use at all. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Currently, the two-world mountains that could make all the outsiders pale when they heard it, that the Dark Star race had deemed as a forbidden danger zone, where even the 10 Hall Masters would not easily set foot in, seemed to become Jian Chen's back garden. His body merged with space, moving in a completely straight trajectory as he hurried towards the capital city as quickly as he could by following the numerous markers he had left down in the past. Along the way, even if he encountered the territories of primordial realm life-devouring beasts, he would pass through them fearlessly. At this moment, he happened to appear above a primordial realm life-devouring beast as he teleported through space. Because the arrival of the curse had caught Jian Chen slightly off guard, he was traveling at full speed, so he could not conceal his presence very well. As a result, the primordial realm life-devouring beast below immediately discovered him the moment he appeared. The life-devouring beast immediately snapped open its eyes and raised his huge head suddenly. However, right when it opened its mouth and wanted to let out a furious roar, it suddenly blanked out. It had clearly sensed an intruder suddenly appear right above it, but it found nothing at all when it raised its head. It was unable to sense anything either. The intruder's presence had only appeared for an instant before vanishing completely again. The primordial realm life-devouring beast that did not possess much intelligence did not seem to understand what had happened. It stared at the empty sky blankly for quite a long while before shaking its head viciously, just treating it as a false impression as it stopped thinking about it. As Jian Chen crossed through the two-world mountains at full speed, the Dark Star race had already condensed the will of their entire race. Right now, in the capital city, the 36 major cities, and the many towns and villages, the members of the Dark Star race had all gathered on the streets, sitting on the ground and forming seals with both hands. They changed the seals rhythmically at exactly the same time as they chanted as if it was some sort of incantation. The cold streets and walls in the surroundings were all covered with glyphs drawn with blood, thickly dotted and innumerable. As the members of the Dark Star race chanted, as their seals changed, the glyphs and inscriptions on the ground and walls began to light up as if it had established some sort of indescribable connection with these people of the Dark Star race. The glyphs possessed wondrous power. As the people of the Dark Star race focused on chanting, the glyphs united their wills, which gathered towards the 36 major cities. In the 36 major cities, 36 faceless statues stood at the center of the cities. A chunk of a flesh and blood that belonged to Jian Chen was sealed within each statue. As a result, the 36 faceless statues possessed some of Jian Chen's presence to a certain degree. Meanwhile, the power of the curse condensed from the will of the entire Dark Star race turned into an invisible, annihilating force that enveloped these faceless statues, using the presence of the flesh and blood as a medium to kill through space. The 36 major cities and the capital city were all like this. Throughout the entire Dark Star world, all members of the Dark Star race, whether old or young, took part in this process, becoming a part of the will and silently offering up their power. At this very moment, Jian Chen could truly be regarded as opposing the entire Dark Star race. All of their citizens wanted to wipe him from existence. Every single member of the Dark Star race had become Jian Chen's enemy. They had become a part of the power that wanted to erase Jian Chen. Within the capital city, the Dark Star Emperor and the 10 Hall Masters did not participate in the curse. Currently, they all remained in their respective divine halls, ready for battle. They were stern and solemn. Secretly, they had already cast down formations, and they had woven up powerful killing formations upon killing formations, each of which could be regarded as the ultimate trap in the eyes of the hall masters. None of them knew whether the outsider who impersonated Kun Tian and disrupted their great ceremony would come, but they had already made preparations for any emergencies. Hall Master Sun ran, "Do you see this? We've already condensed the power of the entire race to cast the ultimate curse. The strength of our race is nowhere close to even a fraction of what we possessed during our prime, such that we can't unleash the limits of the power of the ultimate curse, but this curse is enough to kill any chaotic prime once it's used. You will be avenged soon," the 8th Hall Master who had just ascended to the position murmured softly in the 8th Divine Hall. He was originally a Vice Hall Master of the 8th Divine Hall, a second heavenly layer infinite prime. Now, he had become one of the 10 Hall Masters. The weakest of the 10 Hall Masters. "Kun Tian, you can rest in peace. Your murderer won't be able to live for much longer." In the 10th Divine Hall, Feng Shui sat in the Hall Master's throne dejectedly. Her face was filled with sorrow as she murmured softly as well. At this very moment, the space above the capital city suddenly twisted. In the next moment, extremely powerful sword intent spread out, flooding the surroundings and enveloping the entire capital city in a single moment. Jian Chen's figure had already appeared silently in the capital city. But right now, his feet had already vanished. Beneath his knees, half of his lower legs had already been completely annihilated. As he moved through space, the powerful curse followed him like his shadow, locking onto him firmly like a parasite. He was unable to break free from it no matter what. Jian Chen did not conceal himself at all this time. A presence that belonged to the 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime completely erupted, causing winds to surge through the surroundings. The many members of the Darkstar race performing the incantations immediately felt like their breaths had been sucked away under the pressure. With the pause, the power of the curse from the capital city immediately weakened evidently. The ultimate curse that condenses the will of the entire race. "I see now." With Jian Chen's insight, he only needed a single glance at the situation below to understand the composition of the curse. At the same time, the Darkstar Emperor's presence erupted suddenly from the Darkstar Divine Hall, appearing in the distance instantly and facing him in a stalemate. With the Darkstar Emperor's appearance, a triangular shield also emerged from thin air, immediately expanding in size. It turned into a colossal shield that enveloped the entire capital city, protecting the countless clansmen below. As he stared at Jian Chen, the Darkstar Emperor's expression became as ugly as it could get. The last thing he wished to see still ended up happening. The outsider who had destroyed all the hope of his race had still ended up breaking through with the fruit of nurturing ways. His strength had already increased in an overwhelming manner. Before breaking through, the tenacious life force he demonstrated already made him very difficult to kill. Now that his strength had increased drastically, the Darkstar Emperor saw even less chance at being able to kill him. Behind the Darkstar Emperor, the 10 divine halls glided around quickly, casting down formations upon formations instantly. At the same time, countless formations were activated in the capital city, sealing up the entire region and producing powerful pulses of energy. When these formations enveloped the entire capital city, they also encapsulated Jian Chen. The Darkstar race clearly knew what Jian Chen was capable of. In order to prevent Jian Chen from escaping, they had really gone to great lengths. They went as far as to include the entire capital city just to trap Jian Chen here. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.